sunlight filters through celebratory flags as citizens spot Lord Cyrus and Lady Grace in the marketplace.
Onlookers admire Cyrus and Grace together, remarking that they suit each other like a perfect painting.
Whispers follow the pair as citizens discuss the disappearance and rumored infidelity of the former wife.
Raphelia, disguised in a large hat, listens to the public speculation regarding her own impending divorce. Hidden beneath her hat, the brown-haired woman reflects on the past mistakes she refuses to repeat. A close-up captures Raphelia's wide, expressive eyes as she observes the scene from the crowd's shadows.
A small boy tugs on Raphelia's dress, urgently asking for the identity of the prominent man.
Raphelia explains to the boy that the man is Lord Cyrus, a possible future king. Hearing that the man might become a king, the young boy gasps in absolute starstruck amazement.
Raphelia gazes softly at the couple, feeling a quiet sense of relief for their apparent happiness. Walking alone through a sun-dappled field, she reflects on the relief of seeing everyone alive. Cyrus suddenly confronts the woman, questioning if she understands how much effort he spent finding her. Startled by the sudden recognition, Raphelia stares back at the black-haired man and the sunlit garden.
In a panicked chibi state, Raphelia desperately insists that the man has identified the wrong person.
A memory surfaces of their original wedding day, where Cyrus knelt to kiss her hand ceremoniously. Narration describes her years of lonely isolation as a non-ability user while walking behind her husband. Raphelia reflects on her hollow marriage as she watches Cyrus assist Lady Grace into a carriage. A close-up shows her foot in a green shoe as she begins to run with desperation. Desperation drives the woman as she sprints up a winding stone staircase inside a dark tower. Reaching the top of the stairs, Raphelia's face is filled with absolute wide-eyed horror and dread. Inside the tower chamber, Raphelia discovers Cyrus's lifeless body on a bed while Grace weeps nearby. The woman cries out in agony as she discovers her husband's bloodied, lifeless body in the tower.
A framed text box confirms the shocking and sudden death of her husband in her previous life.
A doctor presents the autopsy results, confirming that a lethal poison from an herb caused the death. A group of nobles gathers as a stern noblewoman in purple prepares to level a serious accusation.
The noblewoman accuses Raphelia of the murder, citing her extensive botanical knowledge as the definitive proof. Narration reveals she was framed and executed as the grim image of a gallows noose appears.
Standing before the gallows, Raphelia questions the value and meaning of her lonely, tragic first life. Recalling her bloodied past, she regrets not pursuing a simple life as a town apothecary instead. As she faces death, she hopes for a chance to be reborn and help other people.
Raphelia's final wish is to live a future life where she can be free and herself.
A white feather drifts through the dark void as Raphelia's eye snaps open in sudden awakening. She finds herself back at her wedding ceremony, staring down as Cyrus repeats his ceremonial kiss. The priest declares them husband and wife, leaving the veiled Raphelia in a state of utter confusion. Raphelia realizes that both she and Cyrus are alive again, causing her massive internal shock. Recognizing the specific chapel scene, the woman realizes she has returned to 2 years in the past. Returning to the past, she walks down the aisle while coming to terms with her miraculous rebirth. Standing in her wedding dress, Raphelia resolves to use this chance to change her once doomed fate. The same sequence of events repeats as she prepares for her wedding night in the palace. Cyrus informs Raphelia that their marriage is purely ceremonial and that they will live entirely separate lives. The man explains he married her solely to gain her family's international political connections and influence. Cyrus declares that he has no desire for children, a memory that once deeply shocked Raphelia.
He establishes rules for their living arrangements, emphasizing that their relationship will remain entirely platonic.
Raphelia remembers her former self as an obedient and restrained wife in her original first life. Looking through a window, she reflects on the dull, isolated married life she once silently endured.
Cyrus demands an answer, prompting Raphelia to snap out of her thoughts and confront her new reality. The woman resolved to stop the future assassination of Lord Cyrus to prevent the atrocity.
She plans to save him and then seek a divorce so both can find individual happiness. Visualizing a simple apothecary home, Raphelia agrees to his terms while dreaming of her eventual freedom. The woman is confident that her new plan to alter the future will succeed this time. A medical document reveals that Bellamist was the official cause of a person's death. Raphelia studies the records, noting she has encountered the name of the lethal herb before. Raphelia recalls her youth as a merchant's daughter whose expertise in rare herbs invited suspicion. Her childhood passion involved documenting local flora and researching their potential pharmaceutical chemical compositions. Young Raphelia enjoys a peaceful moment alone while exploring the vibrant fields of her home. Examining the purple plant, she identifies it as a member of the herb-based fogbane family. She compares Lyramist's medicinal properties to Bellamist, noting it possesses a significantly weaker toxic profile. Raphelia deduces that Lyramist could stimulate immunity against the poison just as a maid arrives. The maid informs Raphelia that Lord Cyrus will miss dinner because of his official duties. Raphelia accepts the news and requests her meal later as the maid confirms the instruction. She reflects on her growing isolation, noting that she consistently eats her evening meals alone.
Deciding to take a walk, Raphelia leaves while the maids prepare to clean her quarters.
She heads toward the palace grounds to appreciate the greenery and enjoy a solitary garden stroll. Raphelia pauses as she notices a group of servants whispering among themselves in the corridor. She recalls the painful judgment she faced as a non-ability user who married into the royalty. Raphelia contrasts her status with Cyrus, a high-ranking ability user and the second prince.
Social hierarchy in the country is strictly divided between ability users and those born without powers. Descending the stairs, she questions why a useless non-user was permitted to join the royal bloodline.
She reminisces about the fleeting hope she once held that her marriage was built on love.
The harsh reality sets in that her union was designed to be purely ceremonial in nature.
Cyrus explicitly rejects the prospect of having children, a cold declaration that leaves Raphelia devastated. The couple shares a bed in silence, physically close yet emotionally distant under the morning light. Raphelia watches her husband sleep, her gaze filled with a mixture of sadness and quiet observation.
Cyrus remains asleep, his face serene despite the tense atmosphere that has defined their recent interactions. A heavy sadness lingers on Raphelia's face as she contemplates her lonely position within the palace.
Without opening his eyes, Cyrus dismisses her and requests that she leave the room immediately.
Raphelia complies with her husband's demand, acknowledging the order with a small, submissive nod.
Her marriage was merely a strategic move for Cyrus to secure vital international diplomatic connections. She understands that her status as a non-user explains why he never desired a family.
Raphelia remembers her parents' advice to remain quiet and obedient after marrying such a powerful man.
Her previous life concluded in total isolation, followed by a wrongful execution on the royal gallows.
She pleads for a second chance to avoid the tragic fate that ended her first life. Raphelia vows to protect her family and prevent any harm from coming to the Riddells. The Queen and Prince Elliot appear, their presence casting a shadow over the bright palace hallway. Raphelia's eyes widen as she recognizes the formidable figures standing directly in her path.
She performs a formal curtsy while facing the Queen and the dismissive prince.
Raphelia identifies the Queen as the primary antagonist responsible for the events leading to her death. She offers a polite greeting to the Queen and Prince Elliot, maintaining her composure despite internal fear.
The Queen looks down at Raphelia through her fan and questions her identity with feigned ignorance.
Raphelia is hurt by the Queen's intentional snub, knowing the woman attended her wedding yesterday. She introduces herself as Cyrus's new wife and humbly requests the Queen's favor and guidance.
The Queen offers a mock apology for her forgetfulness while maintaining a sharp, judgmental gaze.
Flaunting her power, the Queen uses her ability to manifest a plant as a condescending gesture. Raphelia is momentarily stunned by the blatant and aggressive display of magical ability from the Queen. The Queen hands over the plain flowers and bids Raphelia a mocking farewell before walking away.
Raphelia notes Prince Elliot's coldness and realizes the Queen's gift was intended as a public insult.
Stepping outside, Raphelia shields her eyes from the intense glare of the midday sun.
She realizes she made a mistake by venturing out without protection and needs a hot.
Raphelia turns back toward the palace interior to retrieve her missing headwear before the sun burns.
Approaching a doorway, Raphelia overhears the maids debating whether Cyrus or Elliot should be the king.
Raphelia peers through a doorway, startled by the secret conversation she overhears from the castle maids.
The maids favor Cyrus for the throne over Prince Elliot while Raphelia listens from around the corner. Cyrus suddenly looms behind Raphelia and questions her presence, demanding to know what she is whispering about.
Startled by her husband's unexpected arrival, Raphelia nervously laughs and attempts to deflect his probing suspicion.
Raphelia recalls the future while the maids discuss rumors of the king changing the royal succession.
Cyrus realizes the maids are gossiping and coldly orders them to leave the premises immediately.
The maids flee in terror as Cyrus walks away, leaving Raphelia to watch their hasty retreat. Raphelia discovers Cyrus is not the Queen's biological son before shouting to get the maids' attention. The two maids are visually startled as they realize the princess has caught them gossiping. Raphelia lectures the maids on their lack of dignity and warns them about potential eavesdroppers. Raphelia threatens the maids with dismissal if they ever spread such dangerous royal rumors again.
The terrified maids apologize profusely and bow low after being sternly reprimanded by the princess.
Raphelia smiles privately, relieved that her harsh intervention might have saved the staff from execution. Cyrus observes Raphelia from a distance with his arms crossed, appearing intrigued by her sudden assertiveness.
Raphelia eats her meal alone in a massive, quiet dining room while staff members stand by.
She finds her solitary meal flavorless and notes the tense atmosphere currently permeating the entire castle.
Raphelia wishes for a confidant, but decides it doesn't matter since she plans to divorce.
While cutting her food, Raphelia focuses on solidifying her divorce plan to escape her royal life.
A sudden realization strikes Raphelia as she remembers being kidnapped during her previous first life.
She recalls that the kidnapping occurred roughly 18 months after her initial marriage took place.
Raphelia considers using the future kidnapping event to stage a disappearance and gain her freedom.
She ponders the law allowing divorce after 3 years of missing status to finalize her escape.
A maid serves Raphelia a cup of tea, and the princess offers a quiet, polite thanks.
Raphelia enjoys the delicious tea while contemplating how to help Cyrus survive the coming poison.
She remembers that Lyramist tea can build resistance to the Bellamist poison that killed her husband.
Raphelia believes this medicinal resistance is the perfect solution to prevent Cyrus's tragic future demise. She identifies the Forest of Silence as the only location where the necessary medicinal herbs grow.
Cyrus questions her interest in the dangerous forest while she confirms her specific intention to go.
Raphelia expresses her desire to make tea, but Cyrus immediately denies her request for safety reasons.
Cyrus warns of monsters in the forest while Raphelia insists the herbs are for his health. She mentions hearing that he enjoys tea, attempting to persuade him with a gentle, caring smile.
A red-haired man whistles and interrupts the couple's conversation with a playful, teasing remark.
Raphelia identifies Owen, the Knight Commander and Cyrus's friend, who suggests letting her visit the forest.
She notes Owen frequently visits Cyrus's chambers and appears much friendlier than she once believed.
Cyrus explains he cannot escort Raphelia to the forest because of an upcoming state council meeting. Owen offers to handle the escort duties since Cyrus is busy with his official royal responsibilities.
The Knight Commander confidently accepts the task, flashing a charming smile toward the surprised princess.
Owen and Raphelia walk through the sunny forest as he remarks on her love for plants.
Raphelia realizes she had little contact with the friendly Knight Commander during her previous tragic lives. She recalls that in her first life, Owen unfortunately passed away during a widespread plague epidemic. The scene depicts the horrors of the plague, showing victims suffering from incurable fevers and rashes. Hundreds of people perished during the epidemic while waiting for a medicinal cure to be developed.
Cyrus stands mournfully before Owen's casket, highlighting the tragic loss of his loyal childhood friend.
Raphelia walks with Owen, lamenting that he might have survived if the medicine had existed sooner.
Owen stops to ask if something is wrong when he notices Raphelia's suddenly distant, sad expression.
Raphelia realizes she knows how to synthesize the plague cure and has 3 months to prepare.
She looks at Owen with renewed determination, surprising the Knight Commander with her sudden intensity.
Owen draws his blade and asks for a moment as they sense danger within the forest.
A massive griffin-like monster appears in the forest, looming over the pair as Owen prepares battle.
Owen ignites his blade with intense fire magic, ready to protect Raphelia from the screeching beast.
Owen shields Raphelia from a massive monster, his sword burning with intense and protective fire magic.
Owen checks if Raphelia is unharmed and apologizes for his abrupt action while she offers thanks.
Raphelia realizes she has never witnessed Lord Cyrus use his magical fire abilities in such a way.
Owen reveals that Cyrus has struggled with curses and solitary confinement since he was very young. Raphelia is visibly stunned by this revelation, while Owen realizes he has perhaps shared too much.
Owen quickly advises the princess to forget his words, leaving her feeling deeply confused and curious.
Raphelia excitedly discovers the medicinal forest herb she was looking for and alerts the Knight Commander.
Owen offers a warm smile, pleased that the princess successfully found the plant she was seeking.
Holding the harvest, Raphelia rejoices that she can finally prepare the special medicinal tea for Cyrus. The scene shifts to a grand, flower-filled greenhouse where Raphelia and Cyrus sit for tea. Raphelia questions their location, but Cyrus offers to move elsewhere if she finds the setting unpleasant.
While the maid serves, Raphelia reveals her plan to build Cyrus's poison resistance through medicinal tea.
Raphelia compares her current happiness to her lonely past life when she could only watch from afar.
Cyrus notes her delight, admitting he chose the greenhouse because Owen mentioned her love for plants.
Surrounded by vibrant blooms, Raphelia asks her husband for his honest opinion on the new tea. Cyrus sips the beverage and finds the taste refreshing, noting that it is very easy to drink.
Raphelia is satisfied, knowing that his continued consumption of the tea will eventually grant him immunity.
A heavy silence falls between them as Raphelia observes her husband's reluctance to start any conversation. Recalling her parents' lessons on obedience, Raphelia decides to break the silence and addresses Lord Cyrus. She asks if a question would be presumptuous, and Cyrus invites her to speak her mind.
Raphelia asks about the reports of water pollution in the Western District, catching Cyrus by surprise.
Cyrus reacts with visible shock, wondering how his wife became aware of such complex administrative issues. Raphelia explains the dangers of limited potable water while privately recalling the epidemic that killed Owen.
She asks for his official opinion on the aging water systems located within the Western District.
Cyrus sips his tea while Raphelia waits for him to acknowledge her unexpected and serious inquiry.
He admits his surprise, explaining that he was already personally concerned about that exact same problem.
Cyrus notes her remarkable knowledge while Raphelia feigns ignorance to mask her awareness of the future.
He points out her lack of reaction to royal gossip, suspecting she already knew the truth.
Cyrus watches her with intense scrutiny, his sharp eyes searching for any sign of hidden intentions. Raphelia explains her belief that rumors should not be discussed when the actual facts are still uncertain. Cyrus leans in and confirms that the rumors regarding the royal succession are actually absolute facts.
He continues to question her while Raphelia sips her tea, maintaining a perfectly composed and calm facade.
Cyrus asks if the succession concerns her, while Raphelia privately focuses on her eventual divorce plans.
Cyrus admits he has never met a woman like her, clearly intrigued by her unique perspective.
Amidst the lush flowers, Raphelia wonders if their marriage would have prospered under different circumstances.
An unexpected visitor arrives at the greenhouse and calls out to Cyrus, interrupting their private tea.
Raphelia recognizes the woman, feeling that her arrival signifies that nothing has truly changed between them.
The vibrant greenhouse flowers suddenly appear dull as the atmosphere becomes cold and formal. Lady Grace is introduced, standing elegantly among the lilies with her long, flowing silver hair. Lady Grace apologizes for the interruption, though her arrival clearly disrupts the couple's private moment.
She states she has urgent matters to discuss with Cyrus, who asks for the specific details.
Raphelia notes that Grace is allowed to move freely through the greenhouse, highlighting her special status.
Lady Grace suggests that the matter is too private to discuss while the princess is still present.
Cyrus agrees to the private discussion and prepares to leave Raphelia behind in the greenhouse.
As they depart, Lady Grace offers Raphelia a polite apology while leading the prince away.
Raphelia smiles and encourages them to go ahead, masking her internal reaction with a polite response.
Lady Grace glances back with a subtle, knowing smile as she exits the garden with Cyrus.
Cyrus and Lady Grace walk away together, leaving Raphelia alone among the flowers and empty chairs.
Raphelia remains calm, believing her plan will eventually unite the two of them as intended anyway.
A horse-drawn carriage travels down a sunlit road, carrying its occupants toward the next royal engagement. Raphelia asks if it is really all right for her to accompany Cyrus on his trip. Cyrus reassures her that there is no problem and she does not need to ask again.
The royal couple sits in quiet silence inside the carriage as they begin their journey.
Cyrus asks what is wrong, but Raphelia quickly dismisses his concern as being nothing. Raphelia reflects on her happiness that her advice prompted Cyrus to act so quickly.
The scene transitions from Cyrus's focused face to the carriage traveling through a sunlit road.
A pattern of shadows suggests the passage of time during the couple's long journey. Cyrus and Raphelia stand with officials on a bridge overlooking the city's aging waterway.
The prince and princess observe the stone structure of the district's failing water system.
Cyrus walks through the busy district, drawing curious looks from the local townspeople.
Cyrus explains that the water pollution is much more serious than they had previously believed. He warns that the pollution will eventually harm health, local livestock, and essential crops.
Cyrus stresses the urgency of the situation while an official offers his deep gratitude.
The elderly official admits his surprise that the prince personally came to inspect the area. The official expresses his heartfelt gratitude to the royal couple for their direct intervention.
Raphelia notes that fixing the water issue allows for clean treatment during future epidemics.
The princess visits a pharmacy named Pharmacia, hoping to implement her medical prevention plan.
An elderly pharmacist with glasses and a gray beard waits behind the wooden counter. The pharmacist recognizes Lady Raphelia and thanks her for listening to their local concerns.
Raphelia approaches with a basket and asks if the pharmacist would mind assisting her.
She reveals a medicinal plant in a bag that possesses very strong antibacterial properties.
Raphelia explains the plant's lack of side effects and its fast growth for easy cultivation.
She presents the basket of herbs and urges the pharmacist to make good use of them.
The pharmacist looks shocked at the gift, questioning why she would give something so precious.
Raphelia believes that testing this remedy is worthwhile even if unknown future epidemics spread. She provides a scroll containing the detailed preparation method and instructions for the herbs.
Raphelia waves goodbye and departs, leaving the pharmacist standing in the doorway in awe.
She reflects on using her father's imported herbs and decides to cease plant research soon.
Cyrus stands waiting by the blue royal carriage as Raphelia returns from her errand.
Raphelia waves to Cyrus, feeling relieved that she has done everything within her power.
A sudden impact occurs, shown as a red visual effect striking near Cyrus's head.
Raphelia is completely stunned, letting out a gasp of shock as the incident unfolds.
A young boy is restrained on the ground after shouting a question about Cyrus's actions. The boy yells that the citizens are poor because of the king and high taxes.
He cries that his mother worked herself to death and died because of their poverty.
The tearful boy adds that his sister also perished, highlighting his family's tragic fate.
Cyrus turns away from Raphelia and begins to walk toward the restrained child.
Raphelia calls out for Cyrus to wait, her expression filled with worry for the boy.
Raphelia fears that Cyrus intends to use violence against the child for his public outburst. Cyrus surprises everyone by offering a sincere and gentle apology to the young boy. He promises to relay the message to the king and improve the kingdom's systems.
The local townspeople watch the interaction with wide eyes, stunned by the prince's mercy. Raphelia observes her husband with a soft look, deeply moved by his unexpected kindness. The carriage travels down the road, leaving the district as the sun begins to set. Inside the carriage, Cyrus sits in pensive silence while Raphelia looks at him thoughtfully.
Raphelia breaks the silence and asks if the prince is truly all right after the incident.
She notes that although he should be angry, he looks incredibly sad instead. Raphelia remarks on the boy's incredible courage, while Cyrus responds with a faint, hollow laugh.
A heavy silence falls between the couple once again as they sit within the carriage.
Raphelia decides to stay quiet while Cyrus reveals he also lost his mother now.
Raphelia shares her understanding of the boy's feelings while Cyrus reacts with a surprised question.
The princess reflects on the tragic news she heard concerning the prince's biological mother's illness. Raphelia notes that Cyrus still has sand in his hair as he leans his head.
A close-up reveals multiple stubborn grains of sand caught within the prince's dark, messy hair.
Raphelia reaches out to touch Cyrus's face while carefully removing the debris from his hair.
Blushing, Raphelia offers a quick apology and explains her intent was only to help him. Cyrus watches Raphelia with a silent, intense gaze following her soft and unexpected touch. Back at the palace, Cyrus catches Raphelia's hand and stops her with a serious expression. Cyrus reminds Raphelia that tonight is their promised once-a-week day, catching her completely off guard. Raphelia stares at her husband in stunned silence, her face heating up at the reminder.
A flickering candle illuminates the dark room, signaling the start of their private night together.
The royal couple lies together in the large bed, maintaining a respectful and silent distance.
Raphelia reflects on their current situation, finding comfort in simply sleeping beside her husband again.
Tossing restlessly, Raphelia regrets forgetting her hot water bottle as she feels a deep chill.
Cyrus notices her movement and asks if she cannot sleep, to which she admits difficulty.
Raphelia mentions the cold temperature while a bright visual effect emphasizes the chill in the air. Lying in the dark, Raphelia admits she is jealous of Cyrus' natural and radiating body warmth.
Cyrus asks for a moment of her time before shifting his position closer toward her.
Raphelia gasps in surprise as their feet touch under the covers, noting his skin's warmth.
Raphelia asks for permission to borrow his warmth and he pulls her closer. Cam.
The princess smiles contentedly, finding his natural warmth much better than any heating tool.
Cyrus watches Raphelia as she rests against him, his expression softening in the dim light.
The prince gives his permission to stay close, telling her she may do as she likes.
Raphelia expresses her gratitude for the trip, calling the visit a truly meaningful and valuable experience.
Raphelia snuggles closer to her husband, clearly enjoying the rare moment of peaceful connection between them.
Cyrus credits the successful inspection to her suggestion, acknowledging the trip as a valuable opportunity.
Cyrus notes the mayor's waterworks request was delayed, admitting he should have inspected it much sooner.
Raphelia suggests that governance officials should prioritize listening to citizens rather than working from desks. A silhouette of the king appears as Raphelia warns that ignoring reality could spark a revolt. Raphelia acknowledges Cyrus's personal efforts in conducting inspections and appealing to the king and ministers.
She expresses her frustration that the court's surrounding voices determined everything despite the prince's sincerity.
Cyrus thinks to himself that she speaks as if she has been watching him all along. Cyrus reaches out to gently touch her hair as she finally begins to drift off.
Cyrus reflects on how Raphelia feels like a completely different person compared to their first meeting.
A flashback reveals a younger, lonely Raphelia standing beside her father's stern and isolated presence. Back in the present, Cyrus gently strokes his wife's face as she sleeps peacefully beside him.
Cyrus continues to watch Raphelia with a look of quiet intensity in the blue-lit room.
The princess sleeps soundly, her face nestled into the pillow during the quiet night hours. Cyrus leans in closer to his sleeping wife, his face showing a mix of affection.
A close-up focuses on Cyrus's eye as he remains fixated on his sleeping wife's face.
The covers are shown over the couple's feet, highlighting their close proximity under the blankets.
Cyrus overlaps his foot with Raphelia's, maintaining their shared warmth as the night progresses.
The royal couple is shown together in bed, peacefully resting as the dark room softens. Sunlight breaks over the horizon, casting a warm and hopeful glow over the palace grounds. Morning light filters through the trees, signaling the start of a clear and beautiful day.
Raphelia remarks on the lovely day as she stands by the window in her morning gown.
Standing before the grand window, Raphelia suggests taking a walk in the garden together. Raphelia is suddenly startled by a loud, aggressive shouting echoing from elsewhere in the palace. She wonders about the source of the commotion as a loud bubble asks about the noise. A woman in purple screams at a maid for bringing vermilion flowers before dismissing her entirely.
Lydia begs for forgiveness, swearing she will never repeat her mistake to the queen. Queen Adelaide coldly rejects the apology, claiming she is tired of the maid's dull attitude.
The queen dismisses the sobbing maid to the countryside as Raphelia watches from the background. Raphelia stands in silence, reflecting on how incredibly cruel the queen's dismissal of the maid is. Her gaze falls upon the orange flowers scattered across the floor during the tense encounter. Raphelia intervenes, addressing the queen with respect while holding a fresh bunch of the rare flowers. She explains the flowers' rarity, noting they change from orange to deep red as time passes. Queen Adelaide dismisses her, insisting this is a private matter and telling the princess to step back.
A fallen gold locket reveals a family portrait, drawing Raphelia's attention as Lydia reaches for it.
Raphelia connects the portrait to the boy from the district and wonders if Lydia is his sister. Raphelia addresses the queen again, determined to help the maid currently weeping on the floor.
Raphelia requests permission to take Lydia in as her own lady-in-waiting to save her from exile.
The queen questions the need for another attendant, arguing that Raphelia already has more than enough.
A tense silence follows as the queen glares at Raphelia and the trembling, tearful maid.
Queen Adelaide relents and departs, telling Raphelia to do as she pleases regarding the maid's future. The rare flowers serve as a silent witness to the sudden change in Lydia's fortune.
Raphelia kindly asks Lydia if she would like to display the flowers in her new room.
Lydia looks up at Raphelia with tears of profound gratitude following the princess's unexpected kindness.
Lydia hums happily while arranging flowers in Raphelia's room, finding peace in her new position.
Lydia stops her work to ask the princess why she chose to help her so selflessly.
Raphelia explains that the queen's dismissal was unfair and that even royalty can be unreasonable.
Lydia reveals she hasn't smiled since her mother died and she came from a western village. Raphelia realizes her suspicions were correct as Lydia's past perfectly matches the boy she met.
Raphelia takes Lydia's hand and offers her comfort, acknowledging the hardships the young woman has faced.
A close-up shows the two women sharing a moment of mutual trust and budding friendship. Lydia warns Raphelia to remain cautious of Queen Adelaide despite their resolution of the current conflict.
She mentions the succession rumors and the queen's habit of speaking ill of the royal couple.
A vision of Cyrus appears as Raphelia reflects on how he is considered an obstacle to the queen's son, Prince Elliot.
Raphelia recalls the queen's malice from her previous life, adding weight to Lydia's dark warnings.
A sudden realization strikes Raphelia as she pieces together a dark secret from her past.
Raphelia wonders if the queen poisoned Cyrus and framed her to secure the line of succession.
The pieces of the puzzle fall into place, leading Raphelia to believe this is the truth. Raphelia approaches Cyrus's door with a tray of tea, hoping to check on his well-being.
She peeks into the study, softly calling out for Cyrus as she enters the quiet room.
Cyrus has fallen asleep at his desk, exhausted from a long day of reviewing official documents. Raphelia decides to leave a note and the tea, wishing for him to take care of himself.
She leans over his desk and begins to write a gentle message for him to find.
Raphelia signs the note with her nickname, leaving it beside a cup of warm herbal tea.
Raphelia is startled when she realizes she is being watched from behind as she writes her note.
His desk is covered in proposals for waterworks, financial reform, and on-site inspections for the country. Raphelia is touched to see Cyrus actively organizing plans to help the citizens as they discussed.
She looks over the documents while Cyrus remains seated, watching her with a weary but soft expression.
Cyrus watches his wife in the warm light, his face showing a mix of exhaustion and affection.
The couple gazes into each other's eyes, sharing a quiet moment of understanding in the study.
Cyrus asks what she's doing there, and Raphelia offers a quick apology for the intrusion. Cyrus picks up the note Raphelia was writing and listens to her explanation about the tea. Cyrus accepts the tea while Raphelia watches him, glad that she could provide some small comfort. Raphelia begins to offer more help with the paperwork, acknowledging that she is being quite forward.
Owen bursts into the room unannounced, loudly declaring he is there to hang out with them.
Owen greets Raphelia warmly while Cyrus reminds his friend that he really should learn to knock.
Raphelia greets Owen and thanks him for the year again. Owen calls their previous outing a date while Cyrus silently drinks tea in the background.
Owen encourages the couple to continue their business as Raphelia stands by Cyrus's desk. Raphelia asks to assist with clerical work, but Cyrus firmly denies the request as unnecessary. Cyrus rejects Raphelia's concern about his workload, insisting he can manage everything on his own.
Raphelia loudly expresses her boredom and her strong desire to be helpful to her husband.
Owen calls Raphelia cute and tells Cyrus to stop being stubborn and accept her assistance. Cyrus acknowledges that minor chores are delaying important work while staring at the papers before him.
Cyrus relents and allows Raphelia to try one task, leading her to react with great enthusiasm. Cyrus presents a box of documents and tells Raphelia to take them for her assigned task.
Owen and Raphelia examine documents from the Night Order's previous expedition to the Black Forest.
Cyrus explains he needs to redo the budget because expedition funds were reported as running short.
Cyrus glares at Owen, noting that this clerical work should normally be Owen's responsibility.
Symbols indicating the focused passage of time appear as work continues in the quiet study.
Raphelia works diligently with an abacus and several documents while sitting on a blue sofa.
Raphelia surprises both men by announcing she has finished the entire task remarkably quickly.
Raphelia explains her new template and organization system designed to significantly reduce Cyrus's future workload.
Raphelia points out specific irregularities in the units, including a restaurant stamp used for archery supplies. Owen thanks Raphelia for exposing internal issues while Cyrus watches with a serious, observant expression. Cyrus asks Raphelia to continue helping him before shooing Owen back to his own work.
Owen complains as he is sent away while a small purple-haired mascot appears below.
Cyrus states he will organize more tasks for her to assist with starting the next day.
Raphelia accepts the plan and smiles warmly as she prepares to drink her herbal tea.
A tea cart sits in the room as Cyrus asks if today is their shared sleep day.
Raphelia confirms the schedule while Cyrus remains seated at his desk with his chin on his hands.
Raphelia bids her husband farewell for now, promising to come by his room later tonight.
Cyrus sits alone in the study as the doors close, leaving him in quiet solitude.
Cyrus leans on his desk and lets out a deep sigh of exhaustion and relief.
A close-up profile of Cyrus captures his thoughtful and weary expression in the afternoon light. Sunlight filters through the window onto a bouquet of purple hydrangeas as petals drift away. Cyrus sits at his desk surrounded by paperwork as the scene begins to transition to evening.
The royal couple lies together in their grand bed under the soft glow of a candle.
Cyrus asks if her feet are cold, but Raphelia replies that she is fine tonight. Cyrus acknowledges her response as they lie together in the dark and silent bedroom. Cyrus admits that he is actually feeling cold as he looks over at his wife. Raphelia asks if he is all right after their feet touch, and he insists he is fine. Raphelia is shocked to find that Cyrus's body is freezing cold when she touches him. Cyrus explains the fireplace is being repaired and he likely got chilled after taking his bath.
Raphelia looks at Cyrus with concern, wondering what she should do to help him warm up.
A hand reaches out and grips the covers as Cyrus moves closer toward his wife. Cyrus pulls Raphelia into a tight embrace, finding her warmth while she worries about his health. Cyrus holds her close, assuring her he will warm up soon if they stay like this. Their feet touch under the covers as Raphelia calls out to Cyrus in a soft voice. Cyrus gazes into Raphelia's eyes with an intense and focused look in the blue-lit room. Cyrus leans in closer to Raphelia's face, making the atmosphere between them feel heavy and intimate. Raphelia looks startled as Cyrus hovers over her, his expression clouded by a hidden physical struggle. Cyrus groans in pain, his face contorted as he suddenly begins to suffer from a chill. A promotional banner features a woman in purple and a small mascot with a hat. Cyrus continues to groan and sweat as the severity of his sudden illness becomes visually apparent. Cyrus collapses against Raphelia's shoulder while she looks on in shock and deep concern.
Raphelia observes a glowing blue-violet bruise on Cyrus's chest, noting she has never seen such a mark.
Cyrus groans in intense pain while Raphelia holds him and desperately asks if he is all right.
Cyrus dismisses the episode as a common occurrence and coldly orders Raphelia to leave him alone.
Raphelia looks on with a determined and shocked expression, refusing to simply leave him in such pain.
Raphelia pleads with Cyrus to stop pushing himself and urges him to rely more on those around him.
Cyrus sits with his back to Raphelia as the heavy atmosphere of the room remains unchanged.
Cyrus suddenly reaches out toward her and tells her to wait as she begins to move away.
A vase of white flowers shatters on the floor as Raphelia looks back in complete shock.
Raphelia stands over the broken glass and spilled lilies while Cyrus watches her from the grand bed.
Cyrus refuses medical attention while an attendant enters and asks if anything is wrong, leaving Raphelia conflicted.
The attendant approaches the bed while Raphelia stands by, watching the interaction between the two men.
Raphelia wonders if Cyrus is truly all right, realizing she has never seen him in such a state.
Raphelia recalls that in her first life, Cyrus only allowed her to visit him twice after marriage.
Raphelia realizes her current actions have changed the timeline as she is suddenly addressed by the attendant. The attendant insists that everything is fine now and requests that Raphelia return to her own room. Raphelia questions the attendant again, seeking genuine assurance regarding the actual state of Cyrus's health. The attendant confirms Cyrus is fine and emphasizes that her departure is what the Lord himself wishes. Raphelia stands alone in front of the massive closed doors, feeling a deep sense of exclusion. Raphelia acknowledges his workload but remains deeply unsettled by the seizure-like episode she just witnessed.
As Raphelia walks away wondering about a chronic illness, she is startled to see Lady Grace approaching.
Raphelia stops in her tracks, surprised to find Lady Grace in the hallway so late at night. Lady Grace politely addresses Raphelia as she makes her way toward the bedroom she just left.
Raphelia bows her head and offers a quick apology as they pass each other in the corridor.
Raphelia watches Lady Grace walk away, wondering why she is heading to Cyrus's room at this hour.
The attendant welcomes Lady Grace into Cyrus's room, confirming Raphelia's suspicions about who is allowed inside. The heavy bedroom doors click shut, leaving Raphelia on the outside while Lady Grace enters the room. Raphelia realizes that someone must have contacted Lady Grace, prompting her to come running to his side. Raphelia sadly concludes that Lady Grace is the one Cyrus truly wants by his side when he suffers. Raphelia remembers her words about relying on others, now realizing those words were not for her.
A close-up shows Raphelia's resigned and slightly pained expression as she reflects on her current situation.
Raphelia walks down the long hallway, finding some small comfort in the fact that he has someone. A basket overflows with a vibrant assortment of fresh apples, grapes, and oranges for the morning. White flowers bloom beautifully as the scene transitions to a new morning at the royal palace. Lydia insists on carrying the fruit basket to spare Raphelia any burden while they discuss Cyrus's recovery. Raphelia is startled as she opens a door, finding an unexpected visitor already present in the room.
Lady Grace greets Raphelia with a smile, informing her that Cyrus is already awake and inside.
Raphelia politely acknowledges Lady Grace's presence while Lydia watches the interaction with a concerned and wary look. Lydia stops Raphelia to speak with her privately after they leave the presence of the other woman. Raphelia asks if Lydia has heard the rumors, while the maid expresses her frustration at the current situation.
Lydia argues that Cyrus's behavior should have changed after marriage and expresses her disappointment in the situation.
Lydia trembles with rage on behalf of her mistress as Raphelia looks on with a calm expression.
Raphelia calls Lydia kind while the maid continues to grumble about Lady Grace needing to learn her place.
Raphelia reflects on how her initial pain has gradually transformed into a sense of disappointment and resignation.
Raphelia resolves to execute her plan for a peaceful divorce so that everyone can find their own happiness.
A vision of Cyrus and Lady Grace holding hands represents the future Raphelia is working to secure. Raphelia squeezes her hair tightly as she prepares herself mentally for the difficult path she must take.
A door slowly creaks open, revealing the person waiting inside for the morning visit to begin.
Cyrus appears in the doorway with a weary expression, asking his wife what she is doing there. Raphelia offers a morning greeting and asks about his health while Lydia stands behind her with the fruit.
Cyrus dismisses her concern while Raphelia attempts to offer the refreshments they brought for his morning meal.
Raphelia informs Lydia she will be away from the castle for a few days, receiving a calm acknowledgement.
Cyrus suddenly appears and stumbles, causing Raphelia to drop her fruit basket as she calls his name.
Cyrus snaps at Raphelia, telling her not to touch him as he visibly struggles with intense physical pain.
Raphelia freezes in shock, her expression wounded by her husband's sudden and harsh rejection of her help.
Cyrus leans against the doorway in exhaustion while Raphelia and Lydia watch him leave, fruit scattered across the floor.
A small purple-haired mascot appears, signaling a brief whimsical pause before the story continues its emotional progression.
Raphelia stands alone at a grand window overlooking the palace grounds, holding a letter in quiet contemplation.
A close-up reflection in the window pane captures Raphelia's melancholy expression as she looks out at the courtyard.
Through the glass, Raphelia watches Cyrus prepare to depart in a royal carriage alongside Lady Grace. Cyrus and Lady Grace share an intimate moment together, holding hands as they prepare for their journey away.
Lydia expresses her fury over the situation, finding it unforgivable that Lady Grace is allowed near him while Raphelia is excluded.
Raphelia attempts to reassure her upset maid, insisting that she is not feeling particularly down about the recent events.
Raphelia reflects on how his attitude shifted entirely the moment he began to feel the onset of his illness.
Raphelia realizes with a heavy heart that Cyrus is making a deliberate effort to push her away from him. Lydia grumbles about the unfairness of Cyrus choosing to recuperate with Lady Grace instead of his own wife. Raphelia forces a sad smile, trying to convince herself that she is becoming desensitized to this recurring pattern.
Raphelia notes that the pair has a history of spending time alone together whenever things become difficult or stressful.
Raphelia concludes that they simply wish to cherish their time together in private, leaving her to watch from afar.
Raphelia touches the window glass, making a solemn vow to protect her heart from being hurt by him anymore. A determined chibi version of Raphelia decides to focus entirely on completing the clerical tasks Cyrus assigned to her.
A few days pass before Lydia enters the room to announce that Cyrus will be returning home very shortly. Raphelia beams with pride, noting the perfect timing as she has just finished every document in the massive task.
Raphelia sets down a towering stock of completed paperwork and plans to prepare herbal tea for her returning husband.
Lydia remains skeptical of Cyrus's character, but Raphelia dismisses her concerns, suggesting the maid is being far too dramatic.
The clock indicates the passing of time as the women discuss starting final preparations for the evening once tea is ready.
Cyrus returns to his study looking completely drained, rubbing his forehead in a gesture of profound weariness and fatigue.
Cyrus stands before his desk, stunned to find a massive, organized stack of documents waiting for his review. Cyrus stares at the paperwork in disbelief, wondering how Raphelia managed to finish such a monumental task so quickly.
A tray sits on the desk holding warm tea and a handwritten note tucked beside the neatly stocked documents.
Raphelia's note welcomes him home and gently urges him to prioritize his own health over his demanding workload. Cyrus looks at the signature on the note, his expression softening as he reads the familiar name of his wife. A detail of his formal attire suggests he has just arrived, still wearing his vest and jeweled cravat from travel.
Cyrus stands alone in the quiet study, seemingly moved by the unexpected care and efficiency his wife has shown.
Cyrus takes a purposeful step forward, his resolve shifting as he decides to seek out his wife immediately.
Cyrus walks briskly down the long, sunlit palace corridor, his expression a mix of urgency and deep thought.
Cyrus swings open the doors to her room, only to find it empty and realize she is not there. Cyrus stops a passing maid to ask about Raphelia's whereabouts, his concern for his wife becoming more apparent. Cyrus enters a bright garden area, continuing his search for the woman who left the thoughtful note on his desk. Soft floral imagery fills the scene, transitioning the mood to one of elegance and anticipation for their next meeting.
The scene shifts to a serene, sun-drenched sunroom where a long shadow stretches across the polished floor.
Cyrus enters the room and wonders where she could have gone, his search for Raphelia nearing its end.
Cyrus approaches a set of ornate doors, sensing that his wife is likely waiting on the other side. An attendant finishes dressing Raphelia in a stunning new gown, complimenting her beauty while Raphelia wonders if it is overkill.
Hands reach out to open the heavy doors, signaling the arrival of a visitor to the dressing room.
Raphelia turns her head in surprise, her eyes wide as she notices someone entering the room during her preparations.
Raphelia stands elegantly in her yellow dress, calling out to Cyrus with a look of soft, uncertain surprise.
Raphelia offers a warm welcome home and gently inquires about his current well-being after his time away.
Cyrus becomes visibly flustered and stammers, unable to find his words as he takes in his wife's radiant appearance.
Raphelia observes his stunned silence and asks with concern if he is perhaps still feeling unwell from his illness. Raphelia frantically shakes her head, insisting that she is fine and that there is no issue.
Raphelia breathes a sigh of relief while her husband stares at her with a soft, lingering gaze.
Lydia bluntly interrupts, claiming Cyrus is just admiring his wife, though he quickly denies that is the case.
Raphelia explains her invitation to a tea party hosted by the queen for other noble ladies.
A memory of a past tea party causes Raphelia to pause as she reflects on the invitation. She recalls the exclusive nature of the event, reserved only for noblewomen who possess special abilities.
Raphelia remembers being mocked and made a laughingstock the last time she attempted to speak.
Returning to the present, Lydia makes the final adjustments to Raphelia's elegant yellow and pink gown.
Raphelia is surprised to see Cyrus standing at the door, watching her prepare for the event. A close-up reveals Cyrus's quiet and focused expression as he continues to stare at his wife.
Raphelia turns toward him, asking if there is something specific he needs to speak with her about.
Cyrus is caught off guard, stammering and sweating as he struggles to form a coherent response.
Lydia intervenes, reminding Cyrus that Raphelia is leaving and suggesting they postpone their conversation until later.
Cyrus offers a brief apology while Lydia asks Raphelia if she is ready to depart for the party.
Raphelia looks away with a neutral expression, mentally preparing herself for the social gathering ahead.
As Raphelia begins to walk away, Cyrus reaches out toward her in a sudden, silent gesture.
Cyrus stops Raphelia in her tracks by firmly grasping her arm, surprising her with the sudden contact.
A close-up shows Cyrus's hand tightly holding her wrist, emphasizing the urgency of his unspoken thoughts. Cyrus finally finds his voice, thanking her for completing the documents and for the thoughtful morning tea. A detail of his cravat is shown as he expresses his sincere appreciation for her efforts.
Cyrus turns to leave while Raphelia and Lydia watch his retreating form with looks of surprise.
Raphelia and Lydia share a moment of quiet amusement and satisfaction after receiving Cyrus's unexpected gratitude.
Cyrus walks down the long, ornate hallway alone, his silhouette shrinking as he moves into the distance.
The scene shifts to a sunlit garden gazebo where the prestigious royal tea party is underway.
The queen welcomes the guests and reveals she has obtained rare sweets for them to enjoy together.
The noblewomen whisper among themselves, curious about the identity of the person they assume is Cyrus's wife.
The queen officially introduces Raphelia to the group, identifying her as the woman married to Prince Cyrus.
Raphelia politely introduces herself to the noblewomen and expresses her desire to be remembered by them.
The guests offer polite greetings while the queen moves the conversation toward the highlights of the menu.
The queen presents a rare treat, noting that these particular sweets are exceptionally difficult to obtain.
She continues to explain that the delicacies were specially ordered from the prestigious Duchy of Lucerne.
A hand lifts a delicate cup of steaming tea, signaling the formal beginning of the social gathering.
Raphelia finds the atmosphere nostalgic, feeling the familiar weight of social expectations in the air.
She observes that while the setting remains unchanged, Lydia's presence provides her with a new sense of comfort.
A guest complains of fatigue and light sleep, prompting Raphelia to think of a sage-cross remedy.
Another guest mentions skin irritation, and Raphelia suppresses the urge to offer her botanical knowledge.
Raphelia recalls how the queen previously mistook her for an expert, deciding it is better to remain quiet.
Noticing the tea is cooled, the queen prepares to demonstrate her magic by warming the pot.
A glowing magic circle appears under the queen's hand as she activates her unique supernatural ability. The noblewomen look on in surprise and awe as the magic warms the tea before their eyes.
Encouraged by the display, the queen suggests that everyone present should take turns showing off their abilities. The guests agree enthusiastically, eager to see the various talents possessed by the noblewomen at the table.
Raphelia feels a wave of anxiety, fearing that she is about to embarrass herself in front of everyone.
One of the noblewomen asks for a volunteer to be the first to demonstrate their power. A hand reaches out as sparkles fill the air, signaling the start of the magical demonstrations.
A guest uses her ability to create a shimmering, ethereal light effect for the entertainment of the group. Another noblewoman shows off a vibrant bouquet of flowers she has managed to conjure with her magic.
The queen praises the marvelous displays before turning her attention to the next person in the rotation.
The queen calls on Raphelia to take her turn, asking how she intends to entertain the group. Raphelia stares blankly, her mind racing as she prepares to face the scrutiny of the noble ladies.
Raphelia apologizes, stating she possesses no magical abilities to demonstrate to the gathered noblewomen. The queen announces that Raphelia lacks magic, seemingly enjoying the resulting shock among the guests.
Raphelia recognizes the queen's malicious intent to humble her but determines to change the outcome.
Raphelia stands tall in her yellow dress, facing away as she prepares her next move.
Lydia opens a large wooden case while Raphelia prepares to reveal a secret to the guests.
A beautiful wooden violin rests inside the open case, surprising the women at the tea party. A guest asks about the unfamiliar object, admitting she has never seen such a musical instrument.
Raphelia identifies the rare violin from a foreign land, explaining it was inherited from her father.
Raphelia closes her eyes and begins to play, her performance immediately captivating the garden audience. The noblewomen are struck with amazement as shimmering music notes float through the sun-drenched garden.
A detailed view highlights Raphelia's delicate hands as she expertly moves the bow across the strings.
The queen hides her face behind her fan, looking visibly disgruntled by Raphelia's unexpected musical talent.
Raphelia continues her solo performance in the gazebo, surrounded by flowers and the awestruck noble ladies. Sunlight glints off the violin bow as Raphelia pours her heart into the final melodic notes. Raphelia finishes her song and bows her head, standing gracefully amidst the blooming garden flowers.
The noblewomen and Lydia offer polite applause, acknowledging the skill Raphelia displayed without using any magic.
The guests express their deep admiration, praising the wonderful tone and emotional quality of the performance.
The queen watches with a cold gaze as the other women continue to compliment Raphelia's performance.
A guest's hand trembles while holding a teacup as a sinister magical aura begins to manifest.
The garden party continues with gift-giving, and Raphelia is presented with a large, mysterious wooden box.
Raphelia is told the box contains rare wine and is urged to share it with Cyrus.
Raphelia carries the heavy box toward the porch while the queen follows her with a dark expression.
The queen points her finger at the floor, summoning a thorned vine to snake toward Raphelia. Raphelia trips over the magically conjured vine, losing her balance as she walks down the corridor.
Lydia cries out in alarm as Raphelia stumbles, while the queen watches the fall with satisfaction.
Lydia rushes to help the fallen Raphelia, who groans in pain while clutching the wine box.
Raphelia winces as she tries to move, explaining that she has likely twisted her ankle badly.
Lord Owen arrives with his guards, stopping to investigate the commotion occurring in the palace hallway. Owen asks what happened, and Lydia frantically explains that Lady Raphelia has injured her foot.
A hand reaches out to assist the fallen woman as she struggles to regain her composure.
Owen lifts Raphelia into his arms, insisting they go to the infirmary to treat her injury.
Raphelia looks up at Owen in surprise, calling out his name as he carries her away.
Owen tells her to hold on, promising everything will be fine as he carries her further. Raphelia looks flustered and pained, her face flushed as she is carried through the palace grounds.
Cyrus walks through the ornate hallway with a serious expression, his posture reflecting his royal status.
A close-up reveals Cyrus's sharp, focused eyes as he notices a peculiar sight further down the corridor.
A small chibi Raphelia expresses her mortification at being seen in such a clumsy, helpless state. Cyrus demands to know what is happening and why Owen is carrying his wife through the hall.
Cyrus coldly rejects Owen's assistance, asking why he specifically is the one holding Lady Raphelia.
Owen and Raphelia look back at the prince in shock as he confronts them with intensity.
A wide shot captures the tense standoff between the three individuals in the sunlit palace hallway. Owen tries to explain the necessity of his actions, but Cyrus remains unmoved by the justification. Cyrus interrupts Owen, declaring his intention to take custody of his wife and carry her himself.
Raphelia and Owen are both caught off guard as Cyrus prepares to intervene in the situation.
Cyrus takes Raphelia into his own arms, holding her firmly as he prepares to walk away.
Cyrus issues a stern command for the court physician to be summoned to his room immediately. Lydia and Owen watch in stunned silence as Cyrus carries his wife away into the distance. A voice calls out to Prince Cyrus as he retreats down the long, ornate corridor.
Raphelia insists she can walk on her own, but Cyrus refuses to let her down. Cyrus tells Raphelia that since he is her husband, she should rely only on him.
Cyrus carries the protesting Raphelia into the room, ignoring her claims that she can walk.
Cyrus asks if Owen was better, while chibi Raphelia denies ever making such a claim.
As Cyrus places her down, Raphelia looks up at him with wide, surprised eyes.
A detail shows the hem of Raphelia's yellow dress as she is seated on the bed.
Cyrus looms over her, sternly reminding Raphelia of her status as his royal wife.
Raphelia argues the situation necessitated help, explaining that Owen was merely assisting her after her injury.
Cyrus insists that just because she was helped doesn't mean she should press against him.
Raphelia ponders Cyrus's possessiveness, contrasting it with his own public relationship with his mistress, Grace.
Cyrus recalls her previous command not to touch her, while Raphelia attempts to explain her reasoning.
Raphelia points out that Cyrus himself declared their royal marriage was to be only in name.
Cyrus stammers that appearances matter, commanding her not to let other men touch her in public.
Cyrus looks away with a frustrated expression, clicking his tongue in a show of obvious irritation. Cyrus loses his balance and falls onto Raphelia, pinning her to the bed unexpectedly.
The two remain frozen in a compromising position, staring at each other in stunned silence.
Raphelia's voice trembles as she asks Cyrus what he's doing in such a close position.
Cyrus stares down at her intensely, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and focus. The tension mounts as Cyrus leans in closer, his shadow falling across Raphelia's face.
Raphelia's heart races as she looks up at him, feeling completely overwhelmed by his presence.
Cyrus looks away, his eyes filled with a heavy, unspoken emotion as he lingers there.
Cyrus exhales slowly, struggling to regain his composure while still positioned directly over her.
Cyrus softly whispers Raphelia's name, his gaze remaining fixed on her as the moment stretches on.
Cyrus continues to hover over her, the physical proximity creating an undeniable sense of intimacy. A sudden, sharp knock on the door shatters the silence and interrupts their private moment.
Lydia and Owen arrive with Dr. Maurice, the court physician, to examine Raphelia's injured ankle.
Raphelia thanks Lydia for her help while Cyrus turns his back to the group in silence. Lydia sternly asks Cyrus to refrain from any rough conduct while Lady Raphelia is still injured.
A small chibi character appears distressed, feeling overwhelmed by the dramatic events within the palace. A hand carefully adjusts a white flower in a decorative porcelain vase on the table.
Lydia suggests that it would be better for Raphelia to rest properly given the circumstances.
Raphelia explains she wants something to do, noting Lord Kane redistributed her workload for her. Chibi Raphelia says her leg feels better, but Chibi Lydia insists she rests until today.
Lydia asks about a rare nebularis flower, admiring its beauty and questioning its origin.
Raphelia explains she received the rare bloom from the gardener who manages the royal greenhouse.
Raphelia wishes she could be allowed back into the greenhouse to see more rare flowers. Raphelia stares blankly into the distance as she contemplates her desire to visit the greenhouse. Raphelia realizes it is about time for Prince Cyrus to be served his morning herbal tea.
Raphelia reflects on how awkward things have been between her and Cyrus since the bedchamber incident.
Kane enters the room after knocking, addressing Lady Raphelia as she works at her desk.
Raphelia greets Kane and asks him to deliver a stack of finished documents to the prince.
Kane adjusts his glasses, looking at Raphelia with a serious and observant gaze.
A close-up highlights Raphelia's white shoes as she stands on the ornate red carpet.
Kane asks Raphelia how her leg is, explaining that Prince Cyrus ordered him to report back.
Raphelia reassures him her leg is fine and mentions she will begin walking more starting tomorrow.
Kane clears his throat, preparing to relay the second part of the message from Cyrus.
Kane formally states that he has been entrusted with a specific message from Prince Cyrus.
Raphelia smiles pleasantly and asks what the message from the prince could possibly be.
Kane delivers the instruction for Raphelia to come to the prince's private bedchamber later tonight.
A hand knocks firmly on the door, requesting entry into a room in the palace.
Raphelia wears a faint smile while Lydia looks on with a suspicious and weary expression. Raphelia stands outside the massive wooden doors of Cyrus's bedchamber, holding a tray of tea. Raphelia sits in silence, staring ahead with a pensive expression as she reflects on the recent tension.
Prince Cyrus sits nearby, leaning forward with a serious and slightly guarded posture in the dim room. Raphelia offers Cyrus a drink before bed, and he admits that he was feeling quite thirsty.
Cyrus mentions that Kane informed him of Raphelia's assistance with the paperwork and expresses his sincere gratitude.
Raphelia demurs, insisting her contribution was minor and that she only did a small amount to help.
A heavy silence falls between the two as Cyrus continues to sip his tea in the moonlight.
Cyrus acknowledges her response with a brief nod, the quiet atmosphere between them remaining tense and uncertain.
A close-up of Cyrus's face captures a subtle shift in his expression as he prepares to speak.
Cyrus asks if there is anything Raphelia desires, prompting her to ask why he is making such an offer.
Cyrus explains he wants to celebrate her recovery from her injury as a gesture of goodwill toward her.
Raphelia wonders if this is for her injury, her help with paperwork, or an apology for their argument.
Raphelia asks for the key to the greenhouse and permission to use a small plot within the gardens.
Raphelia intends to cultivate a plague cure, but Cyrus asks if such a modest request is truly enough. Cyrus immediately grants the request, promising to inform the gardener that she may begin working there tomorrow.
Raphelia is overcome with joy and thanks Cyrus profusely while he watches her reaction with focus.
Raphelia's expression shifts to one of sudden surprise as Cyrus makes an unexpected move toward her.
Cyrus pulls Raphelia into a sudden, firm embrace, holding her close as the room remains quiet. A wide shot captures the pair standing together in the dimly lit room during their surprising hug.
Raphelia flushes and reminds Cyrus that since they are not in public, they need not act married.
Cyrus maintains his hold and reminds Raphelia that since she is his wife, he has the right.
Raphelia's eyes widen in shock as she processes Cyrus' bold declaration and his firm physical proximity.
Raphelia reasons that if Cyrus has rights as her husband, then she also has rights to him.
The standoff continues as Cyrus holds her, both characters caught in a moment of intense, unexpected intimacy.
Cyrus confesses he was hurt when she swatted his hand away before, leaving Raphelia stunned by him.
Raphelia ponders the inequity of marital rights while the cup of tea sits cooling on the table.
Raphelia admits she was too harsh and apologizes, asking Cyrus to also apologize for his past behavior.
Cyrus is momentarily silenced by her request, his gaze fixed on her as he considers his words. A close-up reveals Raphelia's determined expression as she waits for Cyrus to acknowledge his role in things. Cyrus looks down at Raphelia with a conflicted expression, his face slightly flushed as the tension grows.
Cyrus begins to speak, his voice hesitant as he prepares to offer a rare apology to her.
Cyrus admits he was also in the wrong, and Raphelia smiles, declaring that they are now even.
Raphelia suggests they consider this a formal reconciliation and put their previous disagreements to rest for good.
Cyrus leans his forehead against Raphelia's shoulder, yielding to the moment as they remain in their embrace. Cyrus notes that she reveals more facets of herself and asks if she hid her true nature.
Raphelia laughs nervously, suggesting that perhaps she was simply anxious during their earlier interactions in the palace.
A narrative box reveals Raphelia was desperate to play the part of the obedient and good wife.
Raphelia looks out the window, reflecting on how her efforts in her previous life failed to pay off.
Raphelia embraces Cyrus back, marveling at the surprisingly human side he is showing her in their quarters. Cyrus leans in closer to Raphelia, the physical closeness intensifying as they share this quiet, reconciliatory moment.
Raphelia's breath hitches in surprise as the situation shifts and the two move closer to the bed.
A detailed shot of their feet shows Raphelia losing her balance as she is gently pushed back.
Raphelia lies on the bed, looking up with wide, shimmering eyes as the atmosphere becomes highly charged. Shimmering lights and flowers frame the scene as the boundaries between the two characters begin to blur.
Cyrus looms over Raphelia on the bed, his dark hair falling forward as he stares down intensely.
Raphelia feels pinned down by Cyrus's hand and realizes she cannot pull away from his focused presence. Cyrus' gaze remains fixed on Raphelia, his expression a mixture of desire and search for her reaction.
Raphelia looks up at Cyrus with a flushed face, her heart racing at this unprecedented level of closeness.
The two remain locked in a close embrace on the bed, surrounded by an aura of light.
Raphelia is overwhelmed by the sheer intimacy of the moment, realizing how far they have moved. Cyrus pulls his shirt aside, revealing a sun-shaped tattoo on his shoulder as he gazes at Raphelia. Cyrus notices a blue-violet bruise on Raphelia's skin as they lie together on the bed. Cyrus sits up at the edge of the bed, the room bathed in soft blue light.
Cyrus states that it is late and suggests they both try to get some sleep now.
Raphelia looks surprised as Cyrus moves away to find his own side of the large bed.
Raphelia sits up and looks back at Cyrus, who is already settling into sleep.
Cyrus lies on his side, his back to Raphelia as he prepares to drift off.
Raphelia looks troubled, wondering if she said something odd that caused Cyrus to suddenly retreat.
Raphelia feels her current life is fulfilling, as she is no longer uselessly waiting for time.
Raphelia enjoys the social aspects of her new life, feeling happy to have people to talk to.
Raphelia finds joy in simple tasks like serving tea in the palace's elegant surroundings.
Raphelia and Cyrus continue to share a bed, though they maintain a respectful distance while sleeping.
Narrative boxes reveal that Cyrus has not initiated any physical contact since that specific night.
Cyrus asks if her feet are cold, and Raphelia admits that they are a little chilled.
Cyrus looks toward Raphelia with a contemplative expression as they lie in the quiet room.
Under the covers, Cyrus uses his own feet to share warmth with Raphelia.
Raphelia is touched by the gesture, concluding that Cyrus possesses a genuine hidden kindness after all.
Raphelia watches from a window as Cyrus walks outside with a woman having long white hair.
The white-haired woman stands close to Cyrus, their proximity suggesting a deep level of familiarity.
Raphelia turns away from the window, her expression clouded with a sense of quiet sadness.
Lydia informs Raphelia that Cyrus will be away from the palace for several days.
Lydia admits she is confused by Cyrus's feelings toward Raphelia despite their relationship. Raphelia reflects on how marriage and the heart are separate, feeling there is a void she cannot fill.
Raphelia tells Lydia that she is still truly happy with her current life regardless of everything.
Raphelia offers a bright smile, reassuring her attendant that there is no cause for concern.
Raphelia takes Lydia's hands, expressing her sincere gratitude for the maid's constant kindness. Raphelia reflects that they will divorce eventually and both should pursue their own independent happiness.
Their conversation is interrupted as someone approaches the room where Raphelia and Lydia are talking.
Owen enters and greets Raphelia, asking if she happens to know where Cyrus is.
Raphelia greets Lord Owen and explains that Cyrus departed from the castle earlier that day.
Owen pauses, looking thoughtful as he considers the news of Cyrus's sudden departure.
Owen remarks that Cyrus is likely going through his usual withdrawal period.
Raphelia is startled by the word, asking for clarification on what he means by withdrawal.
Owen explains that Cyrus has a chronic condition that flares up badly every few months.
Owen assumes Cyrus has left the castle to find a quiet place to recuperate.
Raphelia realizes with concern that Cyrus is keeping the truth of his illness from her.
Raphelia questions why Cyrus doesn't remain at the castle to be treated by the royal physician.
Owen hesitates, realizing the sensitivity of the topic he has just introduced to Raphelia.
Owen notes Lady Grace is with him, but worries herbal tea might have adverse effects.
Liquid is poured into a teacup against a background of blooming flowers.
A narrative thought bubble emphasizes Raphelia's desperate need to understand the details of his condition. Raphelia implores Lord Owen to share whatever information he has regarding Cyrus's health.
Raphelia asserts that worrying about and supporting her husband's health is a wife's duty.
Owen worries that talking too freely might break Cyrus's trust as he only knows rough details.
Owen looks at Raphelia with a new understanding of her determination to help. Owen suggests that Raphelia should speak with someone named Alf to learn more clearly.
Raphelia repeats the name Alfred, realizing she has never heard of this person before.
Owen explains that Alf is an old caretaker who used to look after Cyrus.
Owen reaches into his pocket to retrieve a small book of records.
Owen writes down information on a piece of paper for Raphelia to use.
Owen hands over a paper containing Alfred's address to assist Raphelia in her mission.
Owen explains that the destination in the mountains is safe, although he is unsure if Alfred still resides there.
Raphelia expresses her understanding and gratitude to Lord Owen for his assistance and suggestions.
Lord Owen offers a charming smile as he peers out from the entrance of the room.
Raphelia declines Lydia's offer to accompany her, deciding to travel alone in a prepared carriage. Raphelia considers that Cyrus might prefer his condition to remain private, confirming she will handle the inquiry herself. A horse-drawn carriage travels along a winding path through a sun-drenched, vibrant green forest. Looking out the carriage window, Raphelia thinks she must be approaching the correct location.
Raphelia arrives at a peaceful small cottage and begins her walk toward the building. As Raphelia approaches, a voice from the side asks who she must be.
An elderly man with white hair and a beard appears, holding a bundle of wood and a cane.
Raphelia introduces herself, wondering if the man before her is the caretaker named Alfred. The elderly man stops and reacts with surprise after hearing the sound of Raphelia's voice.
Alfred turns and leads Raphelia toward the house, gesturing for her to follow him.
Raphelia is struck by a lingering thought as she observes the elderly man's appearance.
Raphelia wonders if there is something specific about the man's eyes that catches her attention.
A magical chibi character floats above the cottage as the scene transitions to the interior.
A fresh cup of tea is served on a wooden table, emitting a soft glow.
Raphelia thanks Lord Alfred for his hospitality while they sit together in the cottage.
Alfred insists on being called Alf and expresses shock that Cyrus's bride has come to visit.
Alfred asks if she is Raphelia Riddell, leading her to realize he knows her maiden name.
Alfred realizes why her voice sounded so familiar to him as he processes her name. Explaining his blindness, Alfred asks to touch her face to confirm her identity through tactile sensation.
Raphelia remains calm as Alfred gently touches her face to recognize her features with his hands.
Alfred is moved to realize she is Leah, amazed that she has become Cyrus's marriage partner. Raphelia repeats the name Leah in confusion, not yet understanding the connection to her past.
Raphelia recognizes the way she is being addressed and tries to remember the origin of the nickname.
Alfred asks if she recalls a tall tower in the Forest of Mist from 13 years ago. The mention of the forest triggers a specific memory for Raphelia, bringing the past to mind.
In a flashback, a young Raphelia wanders through a forest toward a tall stone tower.
Young Raphelia looks around the Forest of Mist, recalling how she got lost while gathering plants.
From the top of the tower, someone calls out to the young girl wandering below.
Alfred emerges from the tower, thinking his imagination was playing tricks regarding a lone child in the woods.
Young Raphelia introduces herself with a bright smile, catching the elderly man off guard.
Alfred kneels down to speak with the young girl as she looks up at him curiously.
A young, dark-haired boy stands with his back turned inside a room within the tower. Back in the present, Alfred confirms that she is indeed Leah, with no doubt remaining.
The two sit by the fireplace as the conversation shifts to recounting events from the past.
Narrative boxes describe how a boy 3 years older than Raphelia lived inside the mysterious tower. The boy would spot Raphelia from the tower window and ask Alf to check on her safety.
The next day, Raphelia used a map to return to the tower with supplies.
A beautiful bouquet of flowers and a sealed letter represent the exchange between the two children. Raphelia handed gifts to Alf while a small basket was lowered on a rope for exchanges.
Inside the basket, Raphelia found beautiful stones and letters, which made her very happy. Raphelia began visiting the tower regularly, though she was never permitted to go inside the building.
They grew closer through messages exchanged via Alf, despite never speaking directly or seeing each other. Through their correspondence, Raphelia learned about the boy's circumstances, his boredom, and his mother's death. The boy watches Raphelia leave from the window, reflecting on how they never revealed their true identities.
Raphelia reflects on those fun times until her parents discovered her outings and restricted her movement.
In the present, Raphelia finally recalls the boy telling her to use the nickname Leah.
Raphelia smiles, remembering how the boy from the tower suggested the short form of her name.
The elderly man confirms Raphelia's realization while he calmly sips his tea.
Raphelia pauses with her teacup raised, processing the incredible news she just received. Alfred considers the irony of the situation, while Raphelia realizes Russ was actually Cyrus.
Memories of a boy writing letters surface as Raphelia laments her previous ignorance.
Gripping her cup tightly, Raphelia is overwhelmed by the weight of this shocking truth.
Alfred explains that Cyrus likely hasn't recognized her because their childhood connection was faceless.
Deciding to keep her identity secret due to their impending divorce, Raphelia questions Alfred.
The two sit by the warm hearth as Raphelia prepares to learn more.
Raphelia reacts with disbelief upon hearing that Cyrus's condition is actually a powerful curse.
Alfred decides to reveal the full truth, believing Raphelia deserves to understand his situation.
Alfred recounts the prophecy of the blue-violet crest, a secret guarded by the Mysteria family.
Seeing the mark in her mind, Raphelia recognizes the crest she saw on Cyrus's skin.
The caretaker describes the immense power granted to those bearing the nation-altering blue-violet mark.
Alfred warns of total destruction if the power rampages, leaving Raphelia visibly shaken by the stakes.
Narrative boxes explain how the king's fear led him to confine his son within the tower.
Raphelia is pained to realize her childhood pen pal spent his life locked away.
She asks why he remains burdened if the curse was supposedly lifted upon adulthood.
Alfred looks down somberly, admitting that the expected outcome did not match reality.
Raphelia's face is clouded with worry as she realizes the depth of Cyrus's hidden suffering.
A magical chibi character waves cheerfully, providing a brief transition in the somber narrative.
Searching through a sunlit greenhouse, Raphelia finds herbs intended to soothe Cyrus's heavy burden.
Raphelia gently touches the flowers, hoping the remedy will provide her husband some relief.
Ordering her carriage toward the misty forest, Raphelia sets out to find the secluded tower. Looking at her reflection, Raphelia prepares herself to face the secrets hidden in the woods.
Alfred confirms the curse's persistence, referencing historical records of a previous crest-bearer.
He explains how past kings flourished, but the current situation has taken a darker turn.
Cyrus's early leadership was flawless, uniting ministers and efficiently managing the kingdom's many complex affairs.
The king initially celebrated his son's success, viewing it as a sign of national prosperity.
The peace shattered when an assassin invaded Cyrus's private quarters under the cover of night.
In a desperate moment of self-defense, Cyrus lost control of his volatile and overwhelming power.
Alfred recalls finding Cyrus in agony after the power surge destroyed his bedroom during the attack.
Cyrus collapsed on his bed, enduring a painful rampage identical to his childhood experiences.
Raphelia questions the curse's permanence, while Alfred suggests other unknown conditions must be met. Scattered papers suggest that vital information regarding the curse's removal may be missing entirely.
Blaming the caretaker for the incident, the king heartlessly banished Alfred from the royal castle.
Raphelia is deeply moved by the cruelty Alfred and Cyrus faced from the cold king.
Alfred explains that Cyrus continues to work while suffering from periodic, violent power rampages. To protect the palace, Cyrus retreats to the stone tower whenever his power begins overflowing.
A carriage travels through the forest as the narrative highlights Cyrus's unending struggle with tyranny.
Raphelia looks out at the passing trees, her heart heavy with the truth of Cyrus's pain.
The carriage comes to a halt as the driver announces their arrival at the forest's edge. Holding her basket of herbs, Raphelia steps onto the forest floor, determined to help.
Raphelia thanks her attendant, insisting she can navigate the remaining path to the tower alone.
Walking the sun-drenched trail, Raphelia recalls traveling the same route every day as a child.
The tall stone tower looms ahead, standing as a silent monument to Cyrus's long isolation.
Raphelia pauses in confusion as a new unsettling thought begins to take root.
Standing before the ancient door, Raphelia feels an inexplicable sense of familiarity beyond her childhood. Raphelia enters the structure, her gown trailing as she follows an instinctive pull toward the interior.
Hurrying up the spiraling stone stairs, she searches for the source of her mounting unease.
A sudden vision reveals the tower as the place where Cyrus will eventually meet his end. Raphelia realizes her past distress made her overlook the tower during her childhood visits. A man wearing glasses opens a heavy wooden door and looks out cautiously.
Cain questions Lady Raphelia's presence at the tower while she addresses him by name.
Cain apologizes but explains he is unable to allow her to pass through.
Raphelia asserts she has known the prince and tower for years and knows Alfred's circumstances.
Cain acknowledges her words and says he will confirm her arrival with Prince Cyrus.
Raphelia insists it is unnecessary, claiming she has both the resolve and right to enter.
Raphelia believes that even if he asked, Cyrus would likely order him to keep her out.
Narrations describe Raphelia remembering the tower's barrier stones as she enters the building's interior.
Despite lacking magical abilities, Raphelia senses the sacred air within the tower's stone walls. Raphelia reaches a heavy wooden door located at the end of the spiraling staircase.
With a determined yet worried expression, Raphelia reaches out to open the door.
Inside the room, Prince Cyrus lies motionless in bed under a heavy purple blanket. Raphelia reflects that Cyrus is currently alive, noting he does not need to remember.
The prince rests in a sparsely furnished stone room illuminated by bright window light.
Raphelia calls out to the prince as Cyrus begins to wake from his rest.
Approaching the bed, Raphelia asks the prince about his current condition with deep concern. Cyrus is startled and demands to know why Raphelia has come to the tower.
A sudden burst of magical energy scatters papers as Raphelia watches with a pained expression.
Looking away, Cyrus sits up in bed as papers continue to swirl around him.
Cyrus shouts for Raphelia to leave immediately, his face contorted with pain and desperation.
The prince forcefully demands she get out now as his volatile magic searches violently. A magical chibi character appears amidst the chaos while Raphelia stares in utter disbelief.
Cyrus stares at the papers and books scattered across the floor after his outburst.
Raphelia looks down at the mess, stunned into silence by the prince's explosive reaction. Cyrus begs her to leave immediately, stating he does not understand her presence there.
Raphelia gazes at the prince with an expression of intense worry and silent empathy.
Standing behind the sitting prince, Raphelia watches him as he huddles away in distress.
Cyrus reacts with confusion to the name Alf, asking if she means Alfred.
Raphelia confirms she heard about his circumstances and the tower's history as she stands before him.
Cyrus is skeptical that Alfred would share such secrets with someone he just met.
Raphelia states this is not their first meeting, leaving Cyrus confused by her claim. With a gentle smile, Raphelia offers to explain after she finishes arranging her flowers.
Raphelia places blue flowers in a vase, concluding her explanation of their shared past.
Raphelia admits her shock at learning the childhood friend she knew as Russ is Cyrus.
Raphelia mentions she still treasures every letter and stone fragment as Cyrus asks her to stop.
The prince is overwhelmed by the realization that his wife is actually his childhood friend Leah. Memories describe young Leah as a kind, proactive girl who had a deep love for plants. Young Cyrus recalls only giving her fragments of the tower wall polished into small stones.
Memories reveal Cyrus's isolation, noting he only had contact with anyone his age through Owen.
The young prince spent his lonely days gazing out from the tower's stone window. Young Leah waving at the tower remains a vivid and cherished memory for the adult Cyrus.
Back in the present, Cyrus drinks a cup of the hot tea Raphelia prepared. Raphelia explains the tea has calming properties recommended by Alfred to help with his pain.
A steaming cup of tea sits on a saucer surrounded by delicate white flowers. Cyrus questions Raphelia, asking if she truly feels no fear of him despite his condition. Cyrus warns that he might lose control at any moment and asks why she stays. Raphelia reacts with a soft, knowing expression to the prince's fearful and protective questioning. Raphelia explains she knows he would never hurt her, noting she remained unharmed despite his rampages.
Cyrus dismisses her safety as coincidence, warning that she might be injured next time.
Raphelia reassures Cyrus with a gentle smile, telling him he is not to blame. Cyrus is stunned into silence, his expression reflecting deep shock and internal conflict. Raphelia recalls childhood letters about flower crowns, noting that Cyrus's memory is remarkably impressive. She asks if he gave Alfred a crown too, as one was on his head. Finding the memory nostalgic, Raphelia laughs softly while thinking of the caretaker's flowery headpiece.
Cyrus asks if Celine was at the wedding. Raphelia confirms their resemblance and mentions her sister's belief about the tower.
A tall stone tower stands in the sunlight, fulfilling Raphelia's childhood dream of a prince.
Raphelia pauses in thought, her eyes wide as she processes a sudden realization. Cyrus sleeps peacefully surrounded by white flowers as Raphelia watches him with a warm smile.
Raphelia looks down at Lord Cyrus, lamenting the immense physical burden his body carries daily.
She sits by his bed, reflecting on her past life where she knew nothing about him.
The prince moans in his sleep, sweat and pain evident on his resting face.
Raphelia watches the suffering prince intently, her expression filled with concern and quiet determination.
Stroking his hair, Raphelia softly comforts the prince, telling him that everything is all right.
Cyrus settles back into a deeper sleep, his breathing finally calming under her gentle touch. Now knowing the truth, Raphelia resolves to ease his suffering until their eventual divorce.
Lush leaves frame the sky as Raphelia contemplates her plan before their marriage ends.
A royal carriage arrives at the palace gates as the morning sun shines brightly.
A maid enters the room and announces that Lord Cyrus has just returned home. Watching from the window, Raphelia hopes her herbal teas aided in the prince's recovery.
The maid nervously approaches Lady Raphelia, asking if she could make a personal request.
She asks for permission to visit her brother's village in the western region for 2 days.
Raphelia grants permission but asks the worried maid if something has happened in the village. The maid explains that villagers and her brother are falling ill for unknown reasons.
Raphelia reacts with sudden dread, fearing that a known epidemic might be beginning to spread. Cyrus questions the need for another inspection while reviewing papers at his study desk. Raphelia stands before him, stating her intention to personally check the situation for any problems.
She begs him for permission, wanting to personally oversee the follow-up of the medical situation. Raphelia explains her concerns about water quality and the apothecary's use of proper medicinal herbs.
She insists on seeing the results herself when Sir Owen suddenly bursts into the room. Owen greets Cyrus enthusiastically and expresses surprise at seeing Raphelia there as well.
Cyrus refuses the request, warning that the path to the western region is far too dangerous.
Owen offers to escort Raphelia again since he is already heading out to the village. Raphelia begins to thank Owen, but Cyrus slams his hand down on the desk.
A stunned silence follows Cyrus's outburst as the others stare at him in total confusion.
Coughing into his hand, Cyrus decides that he will accompany Raphelia to the village himself.
The scene shifts to a mountain village nestled peacefully within a lush green valley.
Owen stretches while waiting by the carriage as Cyrus and Raphelia arrive at the village.
Cyrus questions Owen's presence. Owen insists on tagging along despite not being strictly needed. Masked villagers welcome the royal party, expressing their gratitude for the group's arrival.
They thank the prince, explaining that the clean water system has finally resolved their issues.
The villagers credit Lord Cyrus for the new waterworks and increased employment in their region.
Looking at Raphelia, Cyrus notes that a positive cycle of recovery has finally been established.
Raphelia watches a villager cough, recognizing the symptoms as a sign of the dreaded epidemic.
She confirms her suspicions, noting that the disease always starts with these specific cold symptoms.
A villager praises a local apothecary's medicine, claiming it works like a panacea for illnesses.
Raphelia decides she must visit the apothecary later and purchase some of the effective medicine.
Masked townspeople walk toward the apothecary's open door to seek help for their ailments. Raphelia is glad her gamble with water and herbs is helping to minimize the damage. Raphelia and her maid look ahead with wide eyes, surprised by something they have spotted.
Lydia's younger brother excitedly calls out to his sister as Raphelia watches with interest.
Lydia and her younger brother share a tearful and heartfelt embrace in the village square.
Lydia asks if her brother is well. He confirms medicine helped his sick friends recover.
The boy excitedly informs Lydia that a new school is being built in the village. Villagers explain the school is government-funded, surprising Lydia as she learns of the news.
Raphelia realizes the village's positive transformation is entirely due to Prince Cyrus's dedicated efforts.
Owen smiles and tells Cyrus the success is exactly what he had expected of him.
The young boy looks up and expresses his deepest gratitude to the prince for everything.
Bowing low, the boy sincerely apologizes to Cyrus for his previous behavior toward him.
Lydia looks on in total confusion while Raphelia watches the exchange with a knowing smile. Cyrus gently places his hand on the boy's head, attributing the success to his courage.
The prince continues to pat the boy's head while thanking him for his kind words.
Raphelia watches the tender interaction, her expression softening with newfound respect for the prince.
The scene shifts to the grand stone palace standing tall under a bright full moon.
Back in her chambers, Raphelia lets out a long sigh of relief after the day.
Raphelia relaxes in her chair, happily reflecting on what a truly wonderful day it was.
She wonders if Lydia is enjoying her time with her brother during their week apart. Spotting a bottle of wine, Raphelia decides she feels like celebrating the day's successful outcome.
Raphelia looks toward the door as she considers her plans for the quiet night ahead.
She reflects on how rarely she gets to dine with Cyrus as she holds wine.
A sudden knock startles Raphelia, who quickly tells the visitor to come inside her room.
Prince Cyrus enters the room, surprising Raphelia as she stands to greet his unexpected arrival.
Raphelia asks if something is wrong, her expression showing surprise at his sudden late-night visit.
Cyrus looks away and briefly denies that anything is wrong as he hesitates to speak.
The prince covers his face with his hand, appearing uncharacteristically shy or perhaps deep in thought. The two stand together in the room, the silence between them filled with a quiet tension. Looking at him with curiosity, Raphelia waits for the prince to explain his presence there.
Cyrus clears his throat as he prepares to address Raphelia with an unexpected personal request.
Looking directly at her, Cyrus asks Raphelia if she would like to have dinner together.
Raphelia is completely stunned into silence by the prince's sudden and formal dinner invitation.
She reacts with a confused sound while looking at the wine she had just prepared.
Dark red wine is poured into a glass, marking the beginning of their shared celebration.
Cyrus and Raphelia sit opposite each other at a candlelit table for an intimate dinner.
Cyrus raises his glass to Raphelia and offers a toast as they begin their meal.
Raphelia takes a drink of the wine, beginning to relax in the prince's quiet cauldron. She looks startled by the strength of the wine as a flush colors her cheeks.
Cyrus pours more wine for Raphelia, simply stating that he agrees with her cheerful sentiments.
Raphelia laughs and eats happily while the prince watches her with a soft, subtle smile.
Framed by white roses, the two enjoy a peaceful and rare moment of shared companionship.
Raphelia thanks Cyrus for indulging her selfish request to visit the village earlier that day.
She explains how wonderful it was to see the results of his actions for the people.
Cyrus starts to reply modestly as he focuses on his meal, his mood appearing quite calm.
Having fallen into a deep sleep, Raphelia lies on the bed while Cyrus sits beside her.
Raphelia sleeps soundly with a peaceful expression as the prince watches her with intense focus.
Cyrus sits on the bed, declaring that he will be the one to break her resolve.
The prince leans in very close to the sleeping Raphelia, his expression filled with unspoken intent.
Raphelia breathes softly in her sleep, completely unaware of the prince's close and lingering presence.
She murmurs that it feels nice while the prince continues to watch over her in silence.
Sitting with his head in his hand, Cyrus warns that she should never drink with anyone else.
A red-haired woman with an intense gaze is featured as the current story segment concludes.
Raphelia looks surprised as Cyrus expresses his deep gratitude for her constant help during their celebratory dinner.
Cyrus explains that her water project solved several local issues, allowing him to fix other regional problems. Smiling warmly, Raphelia credits the prince for the success, insisting she played only a minor role.
The prince watches her with a serious expression, seemingly lost in his own quiet, introspective thoughts.
As she eats, Cyrus begins to recount his painful past isolation while he lived in the tower. He recalls the crushing loneliness following his mother's death and how he unfairly targeted his few allies.
Raphelia listens with a somber expression, her gaze softening as she absorbs the prince's vulnerable admission.
Cyrus confesses that Raphelia's letters and flowers during his isolation eased the darkness within his soul significantly.
Looking directly at her, Cyrus offers his sincere thanks while Raphelia stares back, deeply moved by him.
He describes the tragedy of his mother's decline and his father's cruel neglect regarding her medical care.
Pained by the memory, Cyrus explains his mother never complained about the curse or his father's indifference.
A heavy silence falls over the table as the prince's face flushes with visible, long-buried emotional pain.
Raphelia's eyes well with tears as she feels the weight of the prince's tragic and lonely childhood.
Cyrus quickly apologizes for dampening the mood of their dinner by discussing such a heavy personal history.
Reassuring him, Raphelia insists his mother loved him dearly and that their mutual affection was very deep. She acknowledges how difficult his life has been while the prince remains quiet and focused on her. Tightening his grip on his cutlery, Cyrus mentally notes that the dinner conversation is not going well.
He reflects that he only intended for the dinner to be a simple, professional gesture of thanks.
Raphelia raises her glass, expressing her honest gratitude for being trusted with the story of his mother. A soft, appreciative smile touches the prince's lips as he quietly considers Raphelia's compassionate and kind words. Blushing from the wine, Raphelia prepares to address a more important matter while her focus begins wavering.
Sobbing openly, Raphelia begs Cyrus to stop calling himself cursed and to believe in his own worth.
The prince looks on in total bewilderment as Raphelia's intoxicated emotional outburst continues to escalate rapidly. Cyrus realizes that while he barely touched his drink, Raphelia has polished off almost the entire bottle.
Standing up, Raphelia loudly declares that Cyrus is an amazing person who always puts his country first.
She proclaims that he is the most fit to be king, causing the prince to try shushing her.
Leaning close to his face, Raphelia makes a tearful, solemn promise that his curse will be lifted.
Cyrus calls her Laffy while trying to calm her down, prompting her to react with sudden shock.
Delighted, Raphelia notes he used her nickname. Cyrus admits he only used it because Owen does so.
She lets out a light, happy giggle, her face bright with joy despite her obvious state of intoxication.
Overcome by the alcohol and her emotions, Raphelia suddenly passes out right in front of the prince. Cyrus catches the unconscious Raphelia as she collapses against him, his expression one of utter, stunned disbelief. She falls into a deep, wine-induced slumber, resting her head peacefully on the table amidst their dinner. The prince sits alone at the table, staring at the sleeping woman while processing the chaotic evening.
Clutching his head in exasperation, Cyrus laments the unexpected turn their quiet, celebratory dinner took last night. A silhouette shows Cyrus carrying Raphelia back toward her personal chambers through the quiet, moonlit palace halls.
The prince gently carries Raphelia into her room before tucking her into bed for the rest of the night. In a dream, Raphelia laments her lack of abilities compared to the more suitable and refined Lady Grace.
She expresses her intense internal struggle, feeling inadequate while grasping the bedpost in a moment of despair.
A white-haired woman expresses her deep affection and respect for Lord Cyrus and her desire to serve him. Standing before the ornate double doors, the woman considers the weight of the prince's expectations and her duties. A delicate teacup filled with warm, amber-colored herbal tea sits ready on a table in the morning sunlight. Raphelia clutches her head in pain, suffering from an overwhelming hangover and hoping the tea provides relief. Sitting on her sofa, she worries that Prince Cyrus must have been completely appalled by her drunken behavior. Lush purple flowers frame the scene as the morning transitions into a new day of palace life. Peeking out from her blankets, Raphelia offers a sheepish apology for falling asleep during their dinner last night. Cyrus approaches her and asks exactly how much of their conversation from the previous night she actually remembers.
Looking embarrassed, Raphelia confirms she remembers his mother's story, but seems uncertain about the rest of the night.
She nervously asks if she said anything rude, while Cyrus watches her with a curious, unreadable facial expression.
Leaning in close, Cyrus points out her dark circles and asks if she slept poorly after their dinner.
Cyrus leans in and questions whose fault Raphelia believes her current state is. Raphelia reflects with a worried expression, wondering if she said anything rude the night before. She bashfully recalls the delicious wine while appearing small and dazed on the sofa. A sudden knock at the door startles Raphelia as she sits alone in her tamers. Raphelia looks toward the door and calls for the visitor to come inside. The queen makes an unexpected entrance and Raphelia asks the purpose of her visit. Standing sternly, the queen accuses Raphelia of overstepping her royal position lately. Confused, Raphelia asks for more detail about what the queen is referring to specifically. The queen claims to have heard reports that Raphelia is meddling in national policy. Raphelia attempts to defend herself, stating she would not call her actions meddling. The queen sighs in disappointment while Raphelia looks on with a nervous sweat drop. Leaning in, the queen calls Raphelia's attempts to gain favor tasteless and desperate.
Raphelia's feet shift nervously as she tries to maintain her stance against the accusations.
The queen commands silence, asserting that Raphelia's backtalking proves she doesn't know her place.
Raphelia hangs her head and offers a sincere apology for her perceived insolent behavior.
Looking away, the queen remarks that Raphelia and Cyrus make a disgraceful pair.
Lady Grace suddenly appears and warns the queen against charging Raphelia with any offenses.
Grace offers a polite apology for the interruption while standing before the two women. Grace explains how the prince's infrastructure work is actually benefiting the residents and state.
Grace points out that the queen surely wouldn't want to provoke a rebellion.
Grace adds that Raphelia is also acting out of a desire for national prosperity.
The queen concedes, admitting she cannot argue with a high-level ability user like Grace. Grace smiles and states that resolve is what truly matters, regardless of special abilities.
Raphelia sweats nervously, feeling awkward about her secret status as a non-ability user.
Raphelia reflects on Grace's impressive aura before a maid arrives to announce a guest.
The queen turns her back on them and follows the maid out of the room. Once alone, Grace assures Raphelia that she did not do anything wrong.
The two women exchange a silent, thoughtful moment as they process the queen's departure.
Grace looks at Raphelia with a calm expression, the tension finally beginning to fade.
Raphelia serves tea and apologizes for the wait since her personal maid is away. Grace sips her tea while wondering if she has entered a classic rivalry scenario. They sit together and Raphelia worries that Lydia's presence would have been a disaster.
Raphelia admires Grace's beauty and powerful aura while the other woman quietly drinks tea. She reflects on Grace's holy reputation and her long lineage of service to royalty. Grace sets down her cup and begins to address Raphelia with a serious tone.
Grace reveals she saw Raphelia leaving the tower and asks if she knows Cyrus's condition.
Startled, Raphelia realizes she was seen and hadn't noticed Grace's presence at the tower. Grace explains that she has been secretly applying ability suppression techniques to the prince.
Raphelia reacts with shock to the news of Grace's secret assistance to the prince. Grace describes her family's historical honor of using magic to protect the royal family.
A vision of Cyrus illustrates Grace's role in suppressing his dangerous magical rampages.
Grace states that there is something very important she must tell Raphelia right now. Raphelia listens intently, her expression showing a mix of surprise and growing apprehension. Grace explains that while she can use magic for protection, the tower is dangerous.
Grace warns that as a non-ability user, Raphelia should absolutely not enter the tower.
Grace reaches toward Raphelia as she prepares to show her a significant item.
Grace displays a ring that allows her to monitor the physical state of Cyrus's body.
Clenching her dress, Raphelia quietly acknowledges the serious warning she has been given.
A duster is used to clean a decorative vase in the quiet palace hallway. Raphelia stands alone in a sunlit room holding a duster and lost in thought.
Lady Grace internally admits her deep adoration for Prince Cyrus and her desire to remain by his side.
Raphelia suspects Grace is using a subtle tactic to force an acknowledgement of her relationship with Cyrus.
The young woman believes Grace's beauty and refined character make her the most suitable royal partner.
Raphelia contemplates moving forward with the divorce to allow Grace and Cyrus to rule the kingdom together.
A quiet moment of reflection passes as the sunlight catches the fine details of Raphelia's elegant gown.
Hearing a sudden noise from behind, Raphelia turns her head to investigate the source of the interruption.
Lydia steps into the room, announcing her early return and surprising her mistress with her sudden appearance. Raphelia expresses her surprise while Lydia expresses gratitude for being allowed to take a short holiday.
Raphelia questions the early return, but Lydia explains that her hometown appeared to be doing all.
Lydia stands firmly in the center of the room, ready to resume her duties as personal maid. Lydia insists on helping, while Raphelia points out that she could have easily requested another maid's assistance.
Raphelia explains that she often prefers to handle certain tasks herself, offering a bright and genuine smile.
Lydia humorously asks her lady not to take away all her work, causing a moment of laughter.
Shifting the mood, Lydia mentions a contagious cold that has begun spreading rapidly through a nearby town.
Lydia describes people's search for medicine, while Raphelia narrates her own efforts to distribute healing herbs.
Lydia warns that some refuse medicine and perish from high fevers, causing Raphelia to look visibly concerned.
Determined to stay busy, Raphelia announces she is going to the greenhouse to collect fresh flowers.
The majestic greenhouse exterior glows under the morning sun, housing the kingdom's most precious and rare plants.
Raphelia hopes her secret miracle herbs can save those who are currently suffering from the spreading illness.
A sudden, unexpected sight catches Raphelia's eye, causing her to stop her herb gathering in total surprise.
Owen jokes about his inspection tour being a field trip, though Raphelia reminds him of his responsibilities.
Owen fondly recalls the carriage ride and their lively discussions regarding the various foods within the castle.
Raphelia remembers Sura's stern warning about showing her sleeping face to men, feeling a wave of embarrassment.
Noticing Owen's worsening state, Raphelia asks if he is okay as he begins to stumble and sway.
Owen dismisses his condition as a minor cold, though he appears increasingly pale and physically drained.
Owen complains about the intense heat before being interrupted by a guard while Raphelia checks on him. Overcome by fever, Sir Owen suddenly collapses forward, falling directly into Raphelia's arms in the palace garden.
The two characters drop to their knees amidst the white flowers as the situation turns dangerously critical.
Cyrus enters the scene with a focused gaze, checking Owen's temperature and confirming his severe burning fever. Raphelia cries out in alarm, confirming that Sir Owen is suffering from a dangerously high body temperature.
Owen faints as Raphelia spots the terrifying rashes of the epidemic appearing on his neck and chest.
Prince Cyrus shouts a demand for an explanation as he approaches the two in the palace gardens.
Panicked, Raphelia begs the prince for help, identifying Owen's condition as a dire medical emergency requiring intervention.
Cyrus looks on with a confused and stunned expression, processing the chaotic scene unfolding before his eyes.
A doctor examines the bedridden Owen, expressing grave concern over his high fever and rapidly worsening state.
The doctor points out the spreading red rashes, suspecting the knight has contracted a lethal new fever.
Ophelia refuses to leave the room, insisting on observing the knight's condition despite the doctor's infection warning.
Remembering the epidemic's fatality, Ophelia fears Owen will succumb to the illness just like the recent victims.
Ophelia urgently realizes the symptoms are progressing too fast and she must administer her miracle herbs immediately.
Deciding she lacks the time for proper preparation, she resolves to boil the raw herbs for him. She encourages the unconscious knight to stay strong, promising to prepare his life-saving medicine without any delay. Waking briefly, the fever-stricken knight weakly utters Ophelia's nickname as his vision begins to clear slightly.
A profound silence fills the room as the two share a meaningful look amidst the medical crisis.
Cyrus questions why she is risking herself by staying close to the sick knight and his infection.
Ophelia dismisses the prince's jealousy, stating that saving a life is more important than his petty concerns.
Cyrus maintains a serious and stern face, demanding she take his questions and her safety more seriously. Ophelia counters that the knight's survival is the only thing that truly matters in this grave situation. Ophelia turns and walks away with a firm resolve, leaving Cyrus alone with his growing emotional frustration. The prince's eyes burn with intensity as he watches her leave, his jaw set in visible anger. In a sudden outburst of rage, Cyrus slams his fist against the wall to release his frustration. Prince Cyrus reveals his impressive physique by holding open his dark robe in the dimly lit bedroom. Hovering over his wife, Cyrus asserts that their marital bond exists regardless of any lack of love.
Ophelia protests the advance, claiming that such an interaction would be entirely meaningless for both of them.
The prince continues to loom over her while Ophelia looks away, her resistance clearly visible and firm. Cyrus demands that she fulfills her duties as his wife while pinning her wrists against the bed. A single tear falls from Ophelia's eye as the scene transitions into a field of blue roses.
A dainty porcelain tray holds a cup of steaming herbal teas surrounded by delicate pink flowers.
Ophelia offers herbal tea to the sick knight while the black-haired prince watches them with crossed arms.
Owen questions the bitter-looking medicine, but the young woman urges him to drink it for his recovery. She assures the knight that the herbal mixture is highly effective despite its unpleasant and bitter appearance. Owen claims he usually recovers naturally with sleep, though the woman remains worried about his lingering fever. Looking down at the bedridden knight, Ophelia desperately begs him to take the medicine she prepared.
She emphasizes the importance of his health while Owen gazes back at her with a dazed expression. The prince stands silently in the background, observing the close interaction between his wife and the knight.
Ophelia pleads with the knight to drink the tea, expressing her deep desire to see him recover. Their hands briefly touch as they steady the teacup, creating a moment of quiet, shared intimacy. Owen agrees to drink the medicine solely because she asks so nicely, despite his initial health dismissals. Ophelia watches with hope as the knight takes a large gulp of the medicinal herbal tea.
The knight finishes the bitter drink with a grimace, successfully consuming the remedy Ophelia prepared for him.
Relieved, she suggests Owen changes clothes, but the prince suddenly grabs her arm to intervene. Cyrus insists on taking over the watch and promises to summon a court physician to check Owen.
The prince commands his wife to bathe and then wait for him in his private room.
He reminds her of their prior promise while the scene shifts back to the palace's quiet interior. A bright full moon hangs in the dark night sky, signaling the passage of several hours. Sitting alone on the bed, Ophelia reflects on her relief that Owen's fever has finally started breaking. The doctor confirms that the fever has subsided and tells the woman he will handle Owen's care. She wonders if her medicine was optimal before noticing a light coming from under a nearby door. Entering the room, she finds Cyrus standing with a towel draped over his shoulders after his bath.
Ophelia stops in her tracks, her eyes widening in surprise at the prince's sudden casual appearance.
She explains her relief regarding Owen's health while the prince silently continues to dry his dark hair. A heavy silence fills the space as the prince stands motionless, his expression hidden behind the cowl.
Cyrus finally speaks about Owen, prompting the young woman to look up at him with genuine curiosity.
The prince questions if anything specific occurred when she went to gather the herbs in the forest. Recalling the forest incident, she praises Owen's fire ability and how he bravely protected her from monsters.
Cyrus asks if her interest in the greenhouse was truly just about her supposed love for plants.
Leaning down toward her, the prince's proximity causes Ophelia to ask why he is questioning her intentions. The prince bluntly admits his suspicion of her infidelity, causing Ophelia to react with total, stunned shock.
Disbelieving his accusation, she asks him to repeat himself while he turns his head away in frustration.
The prince dismisses his own statement with a short phrase, attempting to drop the heavy subject matter. He looks back at her with intensity, the tension between them reaching a breaking point in the bedroom.
Cyrus gently lifts her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze as he leans in very close.
The prince moves to kiss her, his eyes focused and determined as their faces draw inches apart.
They sit together on the edge of the large bed, surrounded by an atmosphere of mounting romantic tension.
Raphelia has a sudden realization about a previous warning as a bright light fills her mental vision.
A memory of Grace's ring appears, reminding Raphelia of the woman's deep adoration for Prince Cyrus.
White rose petals drift across the screen as the prince continues his intimate approach toward his wife.
Cyrus questions why she is pulling away from him, his hands still gently holding her chin steady. She explains her belief that kisses should be reserved for those who share a bond of true love. Looking down with a melancholic expression, the prince asks if that is really how she feels.
Raphelia clutches her chest in silence, feeling deeply conflicted about her growing emotions for the stern prince.
The woman looks down at her floral gown, her thoughts filled with intense, bitter resentment.
The silver-haired woman clings to the prince's arm as they walk together through floral scenery. Overwhelmed by grief, the young woman cries while reflecting on her complicated feelings for the prince. She recalls the profound love they shared in another life, contrasting it with her current reality. In the dimly lit bedroom, the prince looms over her, and she asks what he is doing. Side profile of the woman adorned with flowers, confirming a realization as she stares into distance.
Through a decorative window, she decides this is the ideal moment to separate from her husband.
A vase of lush flowers sits near the bed where the woman lies awake and restless. Sitting up in the early morning light, she remains lost in thought about the night's events. Alone in the expansive bed, she wonders if the prince has left for some unknown destination.
She sits quietly by the window, the soft morning light highlighting her somber and reflective mood.
Close-up of her pensive face as she begins to reflect on the events of last minute. A memory flashes back to a vulnerable moment where the prince offered her a sincere apology. The two share a tender, close moment in bed, their faces nearly touching in a memory. She questions the point of his apology if the underlying emotional distance between them remains unchanged. From outside the window, she is seen sitting on the edge of the large white bed. Snapping back to reality, she suddenly remembers something important and looks up with a start. A thought bubble reveals her concern as she wonders about the red-haired knight's current health. The scene shifts to the grand palace interior, bathed in the warmth of the rising sun. Owen waves cheerfully, thanking her and announcing that he has made a full, complete recovery. The woman exhales a sigh of relief, happy to see the knight healthy and standing again. She advises the knight to rest for a few days, and he readily agrees to. Owen holds out a patterned handkerchief, explaining that Cyrus forgot it and asking for its return. She takes the fabric with a stunned expression, surprised that the prince left his personal item. A red-haired girl with glowing eyes stares intensely beside various social media icons and stylized text. Walking down the hallway, she feels relieved to have prevented the knight's death from the illness. Approaching a door, she hears voices and wonders if the prince is currently speaking with someone. Peeking through the cracked door, she spots the prince standing near the silver-haired woman inside. Seeing Lady Grace with her husband, the woman's eyes widen in a sudden, sharp moment of shock. The prince mentions his wife's name while speaking, his back turned toward the hidden, listening observer. He admits his intention to keep his distance from her, leaving his wife feeling deeply hurt. Lady Grace agrees that staying apart is for the best, confirming their shared plan for distance. Standing outside the closed doors, the woman laments that her marriage might have been a mistake. She recalls his cold command to fulfill her wifely duties despite his lack of love.
Cyrus tells Grace he is glad she is there, and she promises to stay forever.
The woman walks down the corridor alone, her heart heavy with the weight of her knowledge.
Pausing under a grand archway, she wonders why she feels so miserable after hearing the truth.
A green-eyed maid looks on with a worried expression as she notices her lady's distressed state. Sitting in her chambers, she is addressed by Lydia, who responds to her presence with curiosity. Handing over the prince's handkerchief, she asks Lydia to wash it and return it to him. Lydia asks if she is all right, sensing that something troubling has happened to her lady. Forcing a smile, she claims she is fine and that nothing is wrong, hiding her true pain. A knock at the door prompts the maid to invite the visitors to enter the room. Two other maids open the ornate doors, announcing their arrival into the young woman's private quarters. A close-up shows hands delivering a sealed envelope to the woman as she waits with anticipation. The maid explains that the letter is a formal message sent from Her Majesty the Queen.
Startled, she wonders what the queen could possibly want from her at this specific, difficult time.
Lydia explains the queen requests she attend an orphanage festival in her place on a specific date. The maid adds that the queen wishes to keep the mission secret from the prince's knowledge. A sharp realization crosses the woman's mind as she stares intently at the letter in her hand.
Raphelia recalls the queen's secret proxy mission to the Lucinel orphanage from a past life.
She remembers a terrifying kidnapping attempt where a sword was drawn inside her royal carriage. A sudden realization strikes that the current events mirror her previous traumatic kidnapping experience exactly.
Raphelia remembers that the queen previously used the proxy mission to place her in danger.
She believes that the queen has been plotting to eliminate her since her marriage began. Lydia notifies the princess that the upcoming festival is scheduled to take place in 1 week. Raphelia confirms the timing of the event while her maid verifies the details from the letter. Reading the handwritten message, she wonders if her recent choices have altered the timeline of events. The young woman steels her resolve, deciding to proceed with her plans despite the sudden changes. Raphelia informs Lydia that she must prepare to leave the castle permanently within a single week.
She envisions leaving everything behind with only a suitcase to secure a divorce from Cyrus.
Raphelia hopes that her departure will finally allow Cyrus and Lady Grace to find true happiness. Oliver asks for the specific timing of her plan to vanish from the royal castle forever.
Sipping her tea with calm determination, the young woman reveals her intention to leave in 3 days.
Startled by the sudden and aggressive timeline, Oliver spits out his tea in sheer disbelief. A shocked question about the 3-day deadline echoes against a clear, leaf-filled blue sky.
The Grand Palace towers glow brilliantly as the warm colors of a peaceful sunset fill the sky. A hand carefully scoops green herbs into a cup to prepare a special medicinal herbal tea.
Raphelia reflects on her progress in building a resistance to the toxic effects of the Bellamist herb. She observes some plain crackers while hoping Cyrus continues his herbal treatment after she is gone.
Stirring her medicinal brew, she reflects on the surprisingly precious memories she shared with the prince.
Memories of intimate dinners and quiet nights with Cyrus fill her mind during her final days.
She recalls a particularly intense and vulnerable moment spent in the arms of the stern prince.
Shaking off her melancholic thoughts, the young woman focuses back on her task and her tea.
Lydia insists on cleaning up the table while the princess expresses her sincere gratitude for her help.
Raphelia requests that Lydia continue to brew and serve the special herbal tea to Cyrus every week. The maid suggests that Cyrus would be much happier if the princess served the tea herself.
Raphelia cryptically asks if she can depend on Lydia's help if something unexpected should happen soon.
The princess offers a small, forced smile while her maid remains concerned about her cryptic request. Raphelia feels confident that she is prepared sufficiently to counter any future poisoning attempts against her. A memory of Cyrus reveals his deep-seated belief that he is burdened by a terrible curse. A physician explains that missing historical records have obscured the true requirements for a complete cure. A sharp realization dawns on the princess as she considers the possibility of a hidden solution.
Raphelia asks Lydia if there is a secret archive within the castle where ancient documents are kept.
Lydia confirms the archive is in the basement, but notes that only a few possess the key.
Raphelia identifies several potential key holders, including the king, queen, Lord Elliot, and her husband Cyrus.
Owen arrives suddenly with a basket of fruit, thanking the princess for nursing him back to health.
The knight stands cheerfully in the doorway as Raphelia and Lydia react with surprise to him.
Raphelia is surprised to see the knight commander visiting her personal quarters so informally today.
Owen offers a friendly greeting, his bright demeanor a sharp contrast to the palace's usual tension.
A wooden crate is filled with ripe golden mangoes, a fresh gift brought into the palace. Dressed in common clothes and a straw hat, Raphelia explores the busy stalls of a town market. A young girl's hand reaches out toward the princess as a voice calls for her sister.
Raphelia meets with Oliver and a girl named Celine who shares her striking facial appearance. Celine scolds her companion for the weak disguise while Raphelia insists her hairstyle is enough protection. Oliver playfully pats the princess's head while teasing her about her careless attitude regarding her safety.
Raphelia warns Oliver not to use her royal name loudly while she is sneaking out in secret.
The three friends share a lighthearted moment of laughter, briefly enjoying their freedom in the steady.
Standing side by side, the two identical women share a silent moment of recognition under the bright sun.
They celebrate their long-awaited reunion as the group prepares to embark on a new, secret mission.
The Grand Palace drawing room stands silent and bathed in the warm light of sunset.
Raphelia recalls her twin sister Celine and their childhood friend Oliver, both of whom lack magical abilities.
A field of blooming flowers represents the wedding of Celine and Oliver shortly before Raphelia's marriage. The young couple now manages a peaceful ranch together in the beautiful southern countryside.
Meeting in secret, Oliver apologizes for the haste while Celine expresses joy at seeing her sister.
Oliver notes his surprise after receiving Raphelia's urgent letter requesting an immediate private meeting. Celine thanks her sister for coming so quickly and asks for an explanation of the situation.
Oliver worries that Raphelia's marriage to Cyrus is failing, while Celine looks on with deep concern.
The princess admits she needs their help regarding her current situation and her future plans.
Celine reacts with pure shock as her sister reveals her detailed plan to secure a divorce.
Oliver quickly covers his wife's mouth to prevent her from shouting about the secret separation.
Raphelia explains her need for a hiding place until the legal statute on her marriage expires. Oliver realizes that their identical appearances provide the perfect cover for Raphelia to vanish without detection.
He notes the potential burden on Celine while emphasizing that the sisters must not be seen together. Celine offers her full support but asks if things with the prince have truly reached their end.
Raphelia sits in somber silence, her gaze fixed on her tea as she contemplates her departure.
Oliver decides to respect her resolve while Raphelia thanks them both for their unwavering kindness.
Oliver questions how Raphelia intends to explain her sudden and total disappearance to their parents.
She plans to maintain the facade of her kidnapping while sending occasional letters to reassure them. Raphelia intends to reveal herself properly once the 3-year waiting period for her divorce is over.
Later that night, Owen approaches the princess with a serious expression and a gentle greeting.
Owen suggests ending their search as darkness falls, while Raphelia laments her failure to find a cure.
She worries that the prince will continue to suffer from the curse even after she is gone.
Grabbing Owen's arm, the princess pleads with the knight to never stop searching for a solution.
Owen looks at the princess with a soft, determined gaze as he accepts her desperate request.
A close-up shows Raphelia holding the knight's hand tightly as they make a silent, solemn pact.
Cyrus suddenly appears on the stairs, coldly questioning why the two of them are together.
The prince looks down at them with a dark, suspicious expression as the atmosphere turns icy.
Owen tries to explain the situation, but the prince stares him down with visible, simmering anger. Cyrus points out that Raphelia does not have the necessary permission to be in this restricted area.
Raphelia defends the knight, explaining that she was the one who insisted on entering the room.
The prince orders Owen to step back as the knight apologizes for allowing the princess inside.
Cyrus dismisses the knight's excuses and repeats his demand for privacy so he can speak to Raphelia.
Owen stands aside as the prince approaches his wife, leaving the two of them alone.
Raphelia recalls the prince's previous coldness, wondering if he cares more for reputation than her safety.
She remembers his earlier indifference, where he claimed she could do as she pleased in private.
Cyrus claims his earlier statement was merely a figure of speech before mentioning a troubling report.
He expresses his extreme displeasure at hearing she was seen walking with another man in town.
Raphelia realizes she cannot explain her meeting with her sister and Oliver without revealing her secret. Cyrus mocks her lack of an excuse, while Raphelia decides she no longer cares about his misunderstandings. She simply promises to be more discreet, keeping her head bowed as she hides her true feelings. Frustrated by her distant attitude, Cyrus slams his hand against the wall in a sharp, aggressive movement.
A lantern flickers in the darkness as the scene shifts back to the restricted palace corridors.
Owen leads Raphelia through the basement, noting that even he rarely visits these ancient, dusty archives. They enter a massive, shadowy room filled with towering shelves and stacks of forgotten historical books. Raphelia feels overwhelmed by the sheer volume of records she must search to find a cure.
Shafts of light reveal the layers of dust covering the rows of ancient leather-bound volumes.
Raphelia reaches for a specific book as Owen watches her with a look of growing realization. The knight asks if she has come all this way specifically to research the prince's curse. Raphelia confirms her mission, determined to find a way to save Cyrus before she leaves forever.
Lord Owen explains he recognizes the princess's quest because he previously attempted the same search.
The knight reaches for a hidden book tucked away on a high, dusty library shelf.
Presenting a worn volume, Owen identifies it as the specific record the princess was seeking.
Raphelia notes the nutritional cover hides historical records. Owen explains it was likely disguised intentionally.
Owen recalls spending long nights with Cyrus reviewing every available document to break the curse.
The princess expresses profound gratitude for the knight's loyalty and his recovery from past illness. Lord Owen returns the sentiment, expressing genuine happiness that the princess is now Cyrus's wife.
Standing amidst the books, the knight claims he can see the deep love she feels. Owen defines her devotion to breaking the curse as love, asking her to protect the prince. Raphelia reads the ancient text regarding the blue-purple crest and the promise of lasting peace. A decorative panel describes the foretold birth of a child carrying the legendary crest and curse. Narrative silhouettes recount the child's imprisonment and the eventual prosperity he brought as a king.
Examining the book closely, the princess discovers that years of the king's records are missing.
Owen points out that the damaged pages appear to have been removed by someone with intent. The knight suggests that a hidden enemy actively works to prevent the curse from being broken.
Raphelia suspects Prince Elliot, as Cyrus's continued suffering would benefit Elliot's own claim to power.
Shedding silent tears, the princess reaffirms her resolve to leave and find her own path. Cyrus pins the princess against the wall, confronting her in the shadows of the silent hallway.
The prince sternly reminds his wife of his status as her husband despite her secret activities. Looking up at him, Raphelia offers a polite lie about adoring only him to maintain appearances.
Cyrus rejects her words as cheap, questioning why her actions constantly contradict her supposed devotion.
Raphelia reminds the prince that he was the one who insisted their marriage remain name only.
The prince asks if she is trying to provoke him, while she offers a hollow apology.
A heavy silence falls between them as Cyrus stares at her with a look of frustration.
A close-up captures the princess's hand hanging limp as she remains trapped in his presence.
Cyrus looks down at her with sadness, asking why she refuses to comply with his wishes.
Raphelia notes that life rarely goes as planned, reflecting on her own troubled past and present.
The prince suddenly pulls her into a tight embrace, hiding his face against her golden hair. While being held, the princess vows to herself that she will not fail her plan.
Cyrus holds her with surprising tenderness, despite the growing emotional distance and tension between them.
The prince looks down with a pained expression, his eyes showing a flicker of inner turmoil. Cyrus confesses that he has never met anyone like her, his grip on her remaining firm. As he calls her name, Raphelia laments the unfairness of their situation and their marriage mistake.
The prince pulls her closer, unwilling to let go even after their cold and biting argument. Cyrus agrees to eventually part ways, his gaze heavy with an unspoken and deep sadness.
Raphelia looks at him with realization, knowing her time in the palace is nearly at its end.
Noticing her tears, Cyrus asks why she is crying while she tries to mask her emotions.
Cyrus reaches out to touch her face, and Raphelia struggles against her lingering feelings for him.
A memory of a passionate night flashes through her mind, haunting her current resolve to leave.
The prince's sweet tone makes Raphelia fear she is misinterpreting his true feelings for her again. Raphelia acknowledges that his warmth feels good, making it even harder for her to walk away.
She silently begs the prince not to disturb her heart further with his rare show of affection.
Cyrus admits that she is the one shaking his foundation, revealing his own deep-seated vulnerability.
The prince leans in and kisses her gently while a single tear escapes her closed eyes.
Under the dim lights of the grand staircase, the two share a long and mournful kiss.
A close-up shows the intimate moment, filled with the weight of their many unsaid, painful feelings.
Pulling away, Cyrus asks if she truly dislikes his touch while she remains in somber silence.
The prince apologizes for forcing her to endure a kiss he believes she does not want.
Raphelia is left questioning his motives, wondering why he would kiss her if no love exists.
A recruitment notice invites readers to join a community server for translators and various editing roles.
Cyrus watches the princess with a deep blush and a look of quiet realization.
A top-down view shows Raphelia standing in the center of her massive red gown.
The prince stops his wife, his mouth partially open as he asks her to wait.
Raphelia ignores his plea and continues walking away up the dark stone staircase. Tears well in the princess's eyes as she keeps her gaze fixed forward in sadness. Reaching out, Cyrus appears physically weakened and deeply troubled as he calls to her.
The princess pauses on the stairs to look back at the prince one last time.
Cyrus struggles to remain upright, his face sweating as he reaches toward his wife.
Raphelia watches in surprise as the prince's hand enters the frame, grasping for her.
With a desperate and pained expression, the black-haired prince reaches toward the princess.
Cyrus collapses on the stairs as Lady Grace rushes forward and calls his name.
The princess looks on in shock as Lady Grace's silver hair flows past her.
Raphelia stands back as the silver-haired woman approaches the fallen, pained prince. Lady Grace supports the prince, holding him close as he struggles against his pain. Raphelia watches from above as Lady Grace comforts Cyrus in their shared moment. A close-up captures the princess's wide-eyed and stunned expression following the prince's collapse.
Wisps of green magical energy swirl around the prince as Lady Grace holds him.
Lady Grace decides that they must take the suffering prince to the tower immediately. Raphelia asks Lady Grace to take care of her husband before she leaves them. Lady Grace reassures the princess, promising to look after Lord Cyrus with full devotion.
The princess watches sadly as Lady Grace leads the weakened prince up the stairs.
A close-up of Raphelia's eye captures her softly whispering her nickname as she departs.
Cyrus looks back at his wife, insisting they must speak when he finally returns. Raphelia stands alone on the dark staircase, reaffirming her resolve to carry out her plan. The scene shifts to the grand palace courtyard where a carriage is prepared for travel.
Raphelia explains her plan to stay overnight at the orphanage to her maid, Celine.
Celine worries about the lack of an escort, but Raphelia notes the timing is perfect.
In a comedic thought, Celine wonders if Cyrus is actually just with Lady Grace. The princess offers a warm farewell to her staff before the carriage begins to move.
Celine looks on with a confused expression as the carriage departs without the prince's knowledge.
Raphelia looks out with a sad smile, confirming she is finally leaving the palace behind.
As the carriage pulls away, the princess reflects on the fun she had in life.
Celine stands alone in the palace, watching the princess's carriage disappear in the distance. Sunlight gleams off the palace windows where the princess once spent her quiet days. Traveling through the sun-dappled forest, Raphelia reflects on how long her previous life felt. Memories of her wedding and various palace moments flash by in a quick montage.
The princess reflects on the many new sides of Lord Cyrus she has seen lately.
A hazy memory shows the couple enjoying a peaceful and intimate tea in the garden.
Raphelia remembers a tender embrace with the prince, a moment of fleeting emotional warmth.
Recalling their recent kiss, the princess touches her fingers to her lips in somber reflection. Raphelia looks down as she remembers slapping the prince during their final bitter confrontation.
Recalling Cyrus' departure with Lady Grace, the princess offers him a silent, heartfelt apology.
The carriage continues its journey as Raphelia acknowledges she won't be there for his return. Cyrus appears in elegant white and gold attire, looking regal and stern upon his return. Servants welcome the prince back to the palace as he steps out of his carriage. The scene shifts to an empty, sunlit palace room with a grand arched doorway.
Panels show the quiet, luxurious interiors of the palace as a new day begins.
Lord Cyrus stands with a serious and determined expression as he enters the palace.
A close-up shows the prince taking a sharp, purposeful step forward into the room. Cyrus bursts into the office and urgently asks if Raphelia has been seen by anyone.
Cyrus enters a room asking Owen for Raphelia, who says she hasn't been seen all day.
Leaning on his hand, the red-haired Owen dismisses the concern while the prince stands in silence.
Owen asks if they fought after he left while Cyrus remains quiet with his back turned.
Owen tells Cyrus to trust her despite his jealousy, which the blushing prince immediately denies feeling.
Owen asks if he knows why Raphelia was in the archive that day, surprising the prince.
Owen explains Raphelia's efforts to break the curse, including herb gathering, inspections, and searching the archives.
A close-up captures the prince's pained and sweating face as he absorbs his friend's revelations.
Calling his behavior ridiculous, the knight insists that every action Raphelia took was for Cyrus's benefit.
Owen warns that continued delusions will cause Raphelia to lose patience with him once and for all.
Cyrus stands alone before a grand sunlit window, reflecting on the weight of his friend's words.
Recalling their kiss, the prince wonders why Raphelia was crying if she truly disliked his presence.
A somber close-up captures Cyrus's inner turmoil as he stands alone in the quiet, sunlit room. Looking out at the gardens, the prince silently resolves that he never wants to hurt her. A hand reaches out toward a vibrant bouquet of yellow and purple flowers on a table.
Cyrus remembers the startled expression on the princess's face when he confronted her in the red dress.
Looking down with deep regret, the prince admits to himself that he doesn't want to hurt her. A sudden sound startles the prince as he stands by the window, shifting his attention elsewhere.
Celine plans a thorough cleanup while the princess is away, unaware that Cyrus has already returned.
The maid is visibly shocked to see Lord Cyrus standing in the room earlier than expected.
Celine stares back at the prince with a nervous expression as he approaches her with questions.
Cyrus is surprised when the maid reveals she has no idea where the princess has gone.
Celine explains Raphelia left for personal business, assuming she did so to give Cyrus space with grace.
The maid notes the princess's kindness, suggesting she is likely enduring a difficult situation in silence.
Cyrus ponders Owen's warning about the princess losing patience with him as he stands in silence.
Walking across the red carpet, the prince questions if there is something he must change about himself. Celine watches the prince depart, offering a small, knowing smile as she holds her cleaning supplies. Cyrus covers his mouth in deep thought, struggling with the realization of his own behavioral flaws. An overhead view captures the carriage traveling through a dense green forest under the bright sun.
Raphelia sits quietly inside the carriage, looking out the window with a look of deep melancholy.
The carriage continues its steady journey along the sun-dappled dirt path deep within the quiet woods. A close-up of the princess shows her resigned expression as she reflects on the passing time.
Armed men block the forest road with swords, forcing the startled driver to bring the carriage to a halt. The horse rears up with a loud neigh as the carriage is suddenly ambushed in the woods. The scene shifts to a vibrant, bustling marketplace in town decorated with colorful flags and banners. Cyrus and Owen walk through the lively town square while the local citizens watch them past. Owen enjoys the lively atmosphere while Cyrus questions why his knight is following him on his patrol.
Owen suggests buying a bouquet for the princess, but Cyrus dismisses the idea as mixing personal business. Smiling, the red-haired knight asks if the princess has informed Lydia about the nature of the curse.
Walking away, the prince remains silent as Owen continues to speak about the curse's many complications.
A close-up shows the prince's steady step forward as he confirms the information has not been shared.
Owen points out the real reason why the prince refuses to take the princess to the tower.
Cyrus recalls his mother's lack of abilities and a childhood rampage where he accidentally caused her injury.
Looking down sadly, the prince reflects on the deep depression and self-hatred caused by his dangerous power. Cyrus explains that Raphelia lacks protective abilities, making it dangerous for her to be near his curse. The prince reflects on his plan to maintain a cold distance to ensure the princess's physical safety. Cyrus notes that the curse is inherited, explaining his extreme reluctance to ever touch the princess intimately. Covering his face, the prince laments his inability to restrain himself and regrets the marriage altogether. Owen watches the prince with a look of pity, understanding the deep burden his friend carries. The knight places a comforting hand on the prince's back as they walk through the town square. A beautiful bouquet of lilies and roses sits beside a gift box containing a bottle of wine.
Owen expresses relief that the present was acquired safely, noting that Daffy will be happy.
A beautiful, sparkling bouquet featuring pink roses and white lilies rests in its delicate paper wrapping.
Cyrus envisions the princess's joyous reaction, imagining her glowing smile while she holds a vibrant bouquet.
The close-up view highlights the intricate details and sparkling allure of the fresh floral arrangement. A voice urgently calls out for Master Cyrus, shouting that a terrible situation has just occurred.
The prince urgently asks the breathless rider what has happened as he arrives at the palace.
The messenger reports the carriage returned without Lady Dephilia, who was abducted by a group of bandits. The beautiful bouquet falls from Cyrus's hands, hitting the floor as the world blurs in shock. Sunlight filters through the lush forest canopy where the quiet carriage stands abandoned in the distance. The bandits stop the carriage and order the person inside to come out immediately while threatening the coachman. The bandits identify the princess as their target and prepare to capture her as she steps outside.
Facing her captors with a firm expression, the princess urgently calls out for the men to wait. Raphelia agrees to follow the men's orders if they allow her terrified coachman to go free. The bandits exchange skeptical and surprised looks, weighing the princess's composed and selfless negotiation offer. The bandits release the coachman, whom Raphelia instructs to return to the castle and report to Cyrus.
White flowers sway gently in the breeze as the carriage door slams shut, sealing the princess's fate. Raphelia stands alone in the forest path, watching as her carriage departs back toward the palace. The bandit mocks the princess's bravery, noting she reportedly lacks any special abilities despite her nerve.
Looking directly at her captor, the princess calmly confirms that she truly has no supernatural abilities.
Surrounded by the men, Raphelia explains that she instead possesses extensive and practical knowledge of plants.
Back at the palace, the prince stands with Lydia, wondering aloud if he should proceed.
Lydia asks for clarification, causing the prince to hesitate before attempting to explain his inner conflict.
Cyrus admits his struggle, asking how he can avoid being disliked by the princess in the future.
The maid realizes his true intentions, nodding knowingly as she prepares to offer him relationship advice. Narrative text emphasizes that consideration is vital for marriage, as love is conveyed through empathetic actions.
Lydia notes the princess was already practicing consideration, prompting Cyrus to ask for a specific example. The maid explains that Lady Dephelia previously took the initiative to assist Cyrus with his work. Lydia recounts how Raphelia prepared herbal health tea, demonstrating deep consideration for the prince's physical well-being.
The maid asks the prince if he felt the princess's deep affection through those thoughtful actions. A chibi version of the prince ponders what specific gift would truly bring happiness to Daphne.
Lydia finds the prince in the palace hallway, calling out to him as she approaches him.
Owen cheerfully suggests that giving the princess a present would be the best way to make up. The knight suggests a wide-brimmed hat as a gift since the princess enjoys the palace gardens. The trio stands in the palace hallway, falling into a momentary silence as they consider the situation.
Lydia lectures the men, explaining that the time spent thinking of a partner's happiness is the gift.
Cyrus reflects deeply on the concept of a happy face as he gazes thoughtfully downward.
The prince recalls the joyful face Raphelia wore when he previously gave her the greenhouse key.
Memories of a peaceful moment flash back, showing the princess smiling brightly while enjoying red wine.
A sudden realization strikes the prince, causing him to whisper an understanding as his plan forms.
Cyrus resolves to buy wine himself and invite Daphne to dinner when she returns home tomorrow.
Lydia continues her lengthy lecture, emphasizing that couples must honestly put their affection and gratitude into words. Owen asks if Lydia has marriage experience, while Cyrus correctly notes that she definitely should not. Lydia promises to inform the prince immediately upon the princess's return, and Cyrus expresses his gratitude. As the prince begins to walk away, Lydia calls out to him one last time with another suggestion.
The maid suggests taking Lady Dephelia with him during his recovery, as she would surely want to nurse him.
A close-up shows the prince's thoughtful expression as he reflects on the maid's final advice.